put that with the affidavit, like, for me, I'm indigenous, so I'm saying that I'm from this country. I'm not from Africa. This is my land. I'm an American national, not a sovereign. Like, you are sovereign if like, for instance, I'm born in Illinois, so that makes me an Illinoisan, right? So without them taking that, putting me in that U.S. citizen status, because that U.S. citizen status put me in the 10-mile square, which is the capital of all corporations all over the world. Like, every last country, like, this blew my mind when I learned this. Like, like the District of Columbia, the three city states, like, this is like the Vatican. Like, we ain't got time to go into this, but every last corporation in the world is registered to the District of Columbia in America. Like, and that blew my mind. And every last country in the world got a constitution just like America, and most people don't notice. Like, this, and it make you go, like, who instituted all this at the same time? Like, who are these people? Roman Catholic, Vatican, Ashkenazis. Like, I'm going to stop right there. We don't want to be in no trouble. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it right there. You know what I'm saying, though? Feel me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, my question is, did you resign? Did you resign from voting? Did you pull your voting registration out?
I ain't voted in, like, since Obama got in. Like, when I found out that the Democratic and the Republican parties are both registered to the same Communist Party, oh my gosh, I don't vote no more. Like, because it's.
I know, but the point is here is that whether you vote or not, it's like someone who get their driver's license suspended. You still ain't out the system. They got you at another level.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you are a voter and you, again, only voters is for the president, and the president, like you said, is a corporation. So if you haven't withdrew your voting, then you are still part of the corporation. For me, I resigned from the state. I am not the agent for my name anymore. Anytime, and it says that in Michigan law, as a resident or registered agent, I quit. And anytime they send me a bill, IRS send me a bill, I don't even open it up because it says I'm no longer the address.
But Mr. Wright, are you saying, Mr. Wright, are you saying you're American national? Is that what you're saying to me?
Actually, I'm a state national. Every state is a
from
country.
From the state you was born in, so. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Because that's important. From the state you were born in, that's what gives you your sovereignty. You can't, if you're a U.S. citizen, then you're subject to the District of Columbia, the federal, municipal, and the territories that they control. Like, this is difficult because, like,
the biggest thing there is you're dead. You're a piece of paper. A U.S. citizen is that piece of paper. It had nothing to do with the flesh and blood. The flesh and blood can never be a U.S. citizen. It's a piece of paper that they made you into. That's what we're talking about. They took you from a three-dimensional man and woman and made you a two-dimensional piece of paper.
They made you dead. They made you dead legally. Like, that's why they could do anything, because you dead. Like, you civil mortis. Like, you ain't got no status, because, like, I'm not trying to get deeper than that, but if you just look at the all caps name, the all caps name is the lowest status. Like, it's minima, maximus, media. It's the lowest status of a slave. Like, they can do anything to their slave because it's their possession. They own it. Like, and you know what? It's so deep. Like, because we don't know nothing about the birth certificate. Like, look, let me preface my life. I stumbled in this shit because I got injured on my job. And then all of a sudden, I was on these medications for pain. So now I'm looking at my bills, and all my bills, all my name is like in all capital letters. So I was asking my significant other, like, why is my name spelled in all capitals on all these papers? Like, what's going on with this? And so we had an ongoing argument for like 6 months until finally I was like, okay, I'm going to find out what this shit is about, because, like, she thought I was crazy. And she still thinks I'm crazy. I just finished arguing with her a minute ago, but it's all right. Anyway, so when I looked into the name and I found out about Justinian's deception, like, this started in 16, like, it started actually in the 1100s, but Justinian's deception, the Roman Catholic Church ecclesiastical deed poll trust law when they put it into effect with the Sestuve trust and the Sestuve trust, because it's two different trusts, and everything is based on the trust, and that's what blew my mind. Because just like I went to school, and they never teach me nothing about no kind of trust. Like everything is a trust and a contract, because a trust is a contract, but a trust is a sacred contract, and it can only be viewed by certain kind of courts. You have to. Certain kind of courts can't even look at a trust.
We know all of this. Well,
we got it. We got that.
But I'm just saying, a lot of people might not know, because I was a rookie. I didn't know none of this. Like, I didn't know none of this.
Well, a lot of people that listen to this show for the last 2 years, they know.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me point you in a direction to help you out. Your all-cap name, you know it's a trust. You just said it. It's the birth certificate trust, right? And we talking about the birth certificate trust, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you sign that birth certificate trust? Did you sign it? Did you sign that birth certificate?
No. I've got my shit authenticated, but I have not signed nothing to nobody. Like
okay.
I've been putting my whole life about signing stuff.
If you didn't sign it, I understand. I'm just saying, if you didn't sign that initial birth certificate, then why you keep saying those bills are yours? The bills is in the name of the trust.
Oh no.
Why don't you send it to the government? Send your bills to the government.
But see, that's where y'all taking me to. Because when I say this to people, they think I'm crazy. Like, send it to United States Treasury with the 456.
We're saying it.
Just send it to them. They the one that control that birth certificate of trust, not you. You look up registered agent in your state. Look up the term registered agent. And you'll see your job.
You killing me, Mr. Wright. You killing me, because everything I sign is Agent 4, authorized Agent 4. Sometimes without prejudice. Sometimes, man, listen. I use the pre-Q on the mail with the $1 stamp in the front and the 2-cent stamp on the back to close the thing out. To like look. I learned this stuff, and I'm wondering why I'm learning this stuff. Like, does it mean anything? Well, but when I send this stuff to people, I don't hear from some people. Like, some people be like, what the hell? And
well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. If you don't hear from them, that's a good thing.
Yeah. But see, I want to, my whole thing, I want to learn it the right way. That's why, like Miss Bev, I listen to you on your show with Robert X. And then, like, I don't really follow Robert X a whole lot, but I always follow you, because I followed you from a long time, and I wanted you to start breaking this down, because like, when you tell people about the birth certificate, they think you're crazy as hell. I mean, oh my gosh, when I say it, I'm getting headache to say it, because my family think I'm crazy as hell, yo.
Well,
I'm trying to bring my family up.
Yeah,
we got a whole bunch of young kids. These women, they don't protect their kids because they don't protect the birth certificate, because they don't believe it. They think I don't know what to say.
Well, you learn it, and then when they see it happen to you, they'll believe it.
Yeah, call back next Sunday, and we can talk about this later. We on borrowed time here. I know they shut people off online.
And thank you for talking with me, no doubt, because I know we passed the time. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you for calling in. Call back next week. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Peace.
All right. Okay, Mr. Rice.
Yeah, Beverly, sound like you got a stalker.
I do.
He follows you everywhere.
Huh?
That's okay. Okay, he follows you everywhere. That's a good thing, I guess. But anyway, Coach, it was good. I hope you enjoyed
I've been sitting here for 10 years, Mr. Myers. So I should have some kind of following.
I tell you. You remind me of what's that other lady?
No, it's longer than 10 years.
Credits and Commerce. What's that lady name that be doing Credits and Commerce? She's been around a while too. I can't think of her name now. But all these people, isn't it confusing to you, or what to do and what not to do? I see why you go so confused. You got so many ideas in your head subconsciously. Yeah. You gotta tap on your subconscious mind bad. It really is, because you got too much information going through you. You got to get one and one. I had to go somewhere to some monastery and cross your legs and float above the ground or something and meditate.
Yes.
One with the plant, or one with the wind, or the sky, and all that. Because you got so much for you. Anyway, folks.
Yes, I got people talking about technology and politics and this and that. You're right, Mr. Rice. You're right.
You gotta have.
Well, we appreciate you.
All right. I'll see you later, folks. Goodbye. Peace and love, folks.
Thank you. Thank everybody for listening. And I might be on tomorrow. I'm not sure what Dr. Robert X is doing. So check in and see if we're on tomorrow. If not, I'll play one of his old shows. So thank you for listening. Peace and love.
Let's start with hope. I threw it in the middle like a skipping stone. The ripples one, son of a gun. Some would not have thought so, but I stand here, Commander-in-Chief, and I take that seriously. But along the way, a rogue ripple turned tidal wave. Reaction to what I tried to do, a rebirth of a nation's hatred. Red, white, and blue is black in there too. Seriously, one man rewriting the book on bad behavior. Maybe cheats the neighbors, feels he gets what they pay for weekend. Pat him on the back and send him on through. No man's ignorance will ever be his virtue. Is this the best we can be? Seriously. Let's talk of fear and why I don't bring it in here. It's a dangerous word, spooks the herd, and we all bleed in the stampede. Fear makes a false friend indeed, and I take it seriously. Oh, hear me now, for the truth gets drowned out by a demigod flexing, a demigod flexing. He's history repeating. Angry, am I angry? You ask, am I angry? And I had a loss for words. After all we've done, every battle hard won, every hair gone gray in the name of this case, in a history text with incredible mistakes, and I pledge my allegiance to
Bowling. And our speaker is Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson, the ad hoc Chief Justice of the Universal World Court. He's also known as Yehoshua Mashiach, the Son of Man. Well, it's great to be back with our American family. It has been another beautiful rise and shine day. Of course, we always thank Father Yah Allah for the breath of life. Therefore, our days are always beautiful. We do thank you for joining us and inviting everyone you know to these calls. For those of you that are new, we would like for you to become a guest. That's a G-U-E-S-S, not a G-U-E-S-T. Doctor and I hope you'll keep us guessing, if you'll ever leave. Of course, we'd like for you to remain with us, because the information you're getting from these calls you're not going to get anywhere else on the planet. as Dr. Henderson is the Son of Man, he is bringing us the fulfillment of all of the holy prophecies and the true interpretations of those words in all the holy books. He also has brought us our redemption through the global network and everything that has been set up to redeem all of mankind. As the ad hoc Chief Justice, he's bringing us the judgment and the sentencings of all unrighteousness on this planet. Therefore, you're not going to get this information anywhere else. We'd like to invite you to our websites. We've got a couple of them, sovcpr.com and .org. That's S as in Sam, O, V as in Victor, CPR like cardiopulmonary resuscitation.com and .org. On these websites, you're going to find letters from Dr. Henderson to the global leaders, historical and educational information, how you may submit letters of complaint and intent to the Universal World Court, how to submit any projects, resumes, names for the redemption list, any general questions, and participate in the indexing. Also, for those of you that are new and may not know what indexing is what provides you your redemption and identifies you under Father Yah Allah's new system. Also, check out the archives of the calls if you've missed one, and if you're new, we do recommend you listen to them from the oldest and work your way up through the newest. The Global Network is working with 7 billion people in 198 nations. The nations have united together with Father Yah Allah in one mind, one heart, and one spirit. They're using their treaties of peace and friendship to come together as one family of mankind. They're working to restore their people and nations' infrastructures by using the 5 divine principles of life, which are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We always like to read you the list of nations, so those of you that are new will know who's working with the Global Network. But also, this is our way of showing you our brothers and sisters around the world. We do know that we have some of you on the call with us on our U.S. calls as well. But we're showing you our love and appreciation and thanks for your hard work all of these years. So I would like to go ahead and yield the call to our beloved sister Akira to please come read the list of nations. Rise and shine, Akira.
Rise and shine. These are the 198 nations that are in the World Global Reset Restoration Network. Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Honduras, Angola, Antigua y Barbuda, Argentina, Armenia, Aruba, Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Barbados, Belarus, Belgium, Belize, Benin, Bhutan, Bolivia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana, Brazil, Brunei, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Burma, Burundi, Cambodia, Cameroon, Canada, Cape Verde, Central African Republic, Chad, Chile, China, Colombia, Comoros, Congo, Costa Rica, Côte d'Ivoire, Croatia, Cuba, Curacao, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Djibouti, Dominica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Egypt, El Salvador, England, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Estonia, Ethiopia, Fiji, Finland, France, Gabon, Gambia, Georgia, Germany, Ghana, Greece, Grenada, Guatemala, Guinea-Bissau, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Hong Kong, Hungary, Iceland, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Jamaica, Japan, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Kiribati, Korea, Kosovo, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Latvia, Lebanon, Lesotho, Liberia, Libya, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Macau, Macedonia, Madagascar, Malawi, Malaysia, Maldives, Mali, Malta, Marshall Islands, Mauritania, Mauritius, Mexico, Micronesia, Moldova, Monaco, Mongolia, Montenegro, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Native American Tribal Confederation, Nauru, Nepal, Netherlands, Netherlands Antilles, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Niger, Nigeria, Norway, Oman, Pakistan, Palau, Palestinian territories, Panama, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Romania, Russia, Rwanda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Samoa, San Marino, Sao Tome and Principe, Saudi Arabia, Scotland, Senegal, Serbia, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Singapore, Saint Martin, Slovakia, Slovenia, Solomon Islands, Somalia, South Africa, Spain, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Suriname, Swaziland, Sweden, Switzerland, Syria, Taiwan, Tajikistan, Tanzania, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Togo, Tonga, Trinidad and Tobago, Tunisia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Tuvalu, Uganda, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, Uruguay, Uzbekistan, Vanuatu, Venezuela, Vietnam, Wales, Yemen, Zambia, Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Akira.
Thank you.
Well, as this is the U.S. call, family, we are still seeing the clown show, the political clown show ongoing on our news media. However, there are a lot more important things going on this planet right now that we as a united family of mankind and in our area, our portion of mankind here in the U.S., we really truly need to be focusing on. Right now, laws are being changed quickly around the United States. These laws are being done to strip the people of their rights to protect themselves. One such type of law is called a red flag law. Now, these red flag laws have been introduced in several of the different states, and they vary different a little bit from state to state. But the basic gist of a red flag law is to strip someone of their Second Amendment rights to bear arms. Just recently, Governor Michelle Grisham of New Mexico signed into law, that would be on Tuesday this week, another red flag law. And it would allow court orders to temporarily seize firearms from individuals. Now, some of these, only law enforcement can take them to the courts in some states. In other states, all a person has to do, and it could be somebody that has a vendetta or a anger problem against someone in their family, anything like that, they literally could turn them in, and the authorities would come and seize their firearms without any due process and just confiscate them, sometimes for specified time periods and sometimes unlimited. So it depends on the state that you live in. However, now, Michelle Grisham is telling law enforcement in her state that if they decide not to abide by this new law, that they should resign as a law enforcement officer. The sheriffs, not only in the state of New Mexico, but the other states that have been fighting these red flag laws, have said in many cases that they refuse to enforce them because there's no due process. And so now, family, you see where they're moving to take from you your way to protect yourselves. That's just one of the things that we're dealing with now, family. We have been watching the plagues that are hitting our planet all over the place. We've had a lot of flooding in Jackson, Mississippi, and other areas of the South. Yehoshua told us that the extremely harsh winter weather was coming to the U.S., and we're seeing that as well. These bizarre weather patterns are building up not only in the U.S. but around the planet. As these things continue, they just recently posted in the Great Lakes high waves. They've had a 40-year low of ice on the lakes, and therefore the winds as they come across there are able to whip those waves up across the lakes, and they've had very high winds. In addition to that, it's increasing the blizzards across the Northeast as that affects the snow as well, coming off of the lakes. The additional plagues that we're watching, of course, coronavirus. We did mention not too long ago that in October they did a simulation for a pandemic. And that simulation was done by so-called public health experts. We already know that the Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization are not set up for disease control or for world health, that they actually have patents for viruses, etc. So in October, they were doing simulations to see what the effect would be on a pandemic across the world. How is it going to affect the people? What's the kill ratio going to be on it? Industry effect, how it affects your industries, your ability to go to work, the governments. And so they called this event 201. And the interesting thing is on 1 January, that would be the month of January, first month, 1, 2020. So now you've got those same numbers, 1 and 20. Well, they estimated 65 million people globally in this pandemic simulation. And that was over an 18-month period. We already know that this is a bioweapon. Yehoshua has been telling us about nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, known as NBC. These things have been planned by the global elite cabal because right now they're being exposed and prosecuted. So as we're watching their last-ditch effort at keeping themselves in power, we already know that these things, that their staying in power is not going to happen. We already know what's been written, and that is what is going to be coming past. Father Yah put in all of the holy books what was necessary so mankind would know what was coming and how to deal with it. And of course, with Yehoshua being here, he's already giving us the interpretations of all of these holy books. So now we have the full truth as it is being given to us. So that clears up a lot of confusion. We knew that he would come during this time of a cloud of confusion. And so now we are seeing that cloud of confusion being cleared up by the words of Yehoshua himself. We've had some major earthquakes in the last few weeks as well, family. There was a 7.7 quake off the coast of Jamaica just a couple of weeks ago. Volcanic eruptions in places that haven't had any for a number of years. Of course, the coronavirus. Then you've got the H1N1 swine flu, the H5N1 bird flu, the H5N8 bird flu, and these are affecting not only people but the animals as well. In addition to that, Black Plague is on the rise. Here in the U.S., we're seeing areas infested with rats. Now, the rat infestations are the worst in Chicago and in L.A. Rats carry, not only rats, but squirrels, other rodents, carry the Black Plague, or also known as the bubonic plague. L.A. County has a horrible homeless situation. We have over 59,000 in the last year of our brothers and sisters have become homeless in L.A. County. Because they're homeless, we have higher rates of garbage on the streets. And then you have them outside, so they're more readily at risk to the rats. And the infestation has gotten into the buildings and everything else. And with recent laws that California has passed for the pest control companies to not use the best products to kill the rodents, they're being forced to use green alternatives which don't work as effectively. So therefore, the laws that they're passing in California are adding to even more problems in that state. Family, I'm not telling you these things to put you into fear, but you have to be aware of what's going on. The Black Plague is transmitted through fleas and urine droppings. I mean, getting a bite from a rodent is not that common, but they leave their urine droppings and fleas are all over the place, and they carry those diseases. So we must get prepared, family. Yehoshua told us just a few days ago that those of us that have been prepared, that have put aside the things that we need for our families to go extended periods of time, as we see the infrastructure having been shut down in several places around the world now, in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Italy, in China, where the coronavirus is becoming much more of a pandemic. These areas, they're saying now, don't send the children to school, don't come to work, and therefore the infrastructure is being affected. If people are not traveling, the trucks aren't moving, and the food is not being carried to the grocery stores. And unless you're prepared with food and water for you and your families, you're not going to have what you need. So you have a small window of time, family, to get yourself prepared. We're working, family, knowing that all of these things are becoming critical. They will become even more critical in the United States. So while those in Washington, D.C. are concerning themselves about who's going to be sitting on the next kingly or queenly throne of the president in D.C., they're not paying much attention to what's really going on around them. Family, we are the sovereign principals, not only of this nation, but of our brother and sister nations around the world, of the 198. It is up to us to carry the torch, so to speak, to spread the word, to bring as many people to indexing and redemption as we possibly can. It is up to us to educate those around us and tell them to prepare as well. We know that the words of Yehoshua are going forth across this planet, and that they are not returning void to him. He and the Father are one, and Father is giving to him what is necessary to give to mankind. If we are wise, we will take what he says to heart. Because at this point in time, family, we have a lot of people running around us willy-nilly. They have no comprehension of what they're going to be dealing with. They're not at all prepared. And without a true and personal, total commitment without doubt to Father Yah Allah and his Son, they're not going to survive. I know that many have been listening to Yehoshua and yet have not heeded his words. There are people in this nation that have been hearing him speak for decades now. Some call him amusing. Some say he's just full of himself. And some say, oh, that you don't have to pay any attention to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Yet and still, everything he says happens. And so there are those that are trying to figure out, how does he know? He knows because he and Father, Yah, are one. And as Father knows all, sees all, has created all, and is all-powerful, there is nothing that is not available to him. So family, we of the righteous, and of course we know we have unrighteous listening to this call as well, but if you're in that category, you're doomed. You're not going to make it. You're not going to survive. But those of you of the righteous, we've got a big job ahead of us. And in the midst of everything going on around us, we shouldn't fear. Because if we fear, we're not totally trusting Father Yah Allah, and we don't totally love him. Because perfect love for him casts out that fear. But we've got a big job ahead of us. And it's going to be up to us working together as one in our neighborhoods, in our states, in our nations, and around the world as one family. The global family is working together and working hard. The U.S., as usual, has been behind the 8 ball. You actually are playing catch-up because you've been so manipulated and so lied to. But we do see evidence of our brothers and sisters in this nation waking up. They've got to wake up not only to the fact of what's going on, but they've got to wake up to the fact that who truly owns and controls this planet. It's not the politicians. It is Father Yah Allah and his Son. Because the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. All that is above it, all that is within it, all that is beneath it, and all that is around it belongs to Father Yah Allah. So it's only being on his team, family, that we're going to get through this. But we do have a promise for him that we shall get through this. Wisdom and understanding are the things that we need above all right now. And we know that if we ask our Father for wisdom, that he will give it to us. We need to be reading all of the holy books, family. And that's the Bible, the Quran, the Septuagint, the Torah, the Tanakh, the Bhagavad Gita, the Apocrypha, all of those holy books, family, because there's wisdom and understanding in those books as well. And we're not trying to be religious because we're not religious. We are spiritual, but we're not religious. The spirituality of mankind is simply relationship with his Father and Son. That is what will get us through. And having that wisdom is what will get us through, family. While you can, ask Father Yah-Allah what you need to prepare, because He will show you. And He can lead you to where you can get what you need to prepare. Our military is already preparing, family. They know what's coming down the pike and what they're going to have to deal with. In fact, they've been preparing for quite some time. In the same time of preparing for going forward in a period of famine, drought, plagues, they're still working to protect our children, going in and getting them out of sex trafficking and the drug trafficking, and delivering them from their abusers. So all of these things are happening at the same time, family. We know that several of you are actually involved in these things, and that your work is very heavy right now. We know some of you are military. Some of you are law enforcement. And sometimes you deal with things within your job descriptions that might possibly, if you're a righteous person, go against what you know is right. Right now, there's only one that we have to answer to, family. It's not the government. It's not the IRS. It's not the CDC, the World Health Organization. It's not even the judicial system. We have to answer to Father Yah-Allah. So our focus has to be like a laser right now, family, because we've got a lot to go through. But we're going to get there. Everything is in place, actually, for us. The Global Network's been working for a long time, decades now, putting everything together to restore mankind. So there's really nothing missing, family. All we've got to do is keep putting one foot in front of the other one, taking every day, thankful for the days that Father Yah-Allah gives us, asking for His wisdom daily so that we know how best to take care of our families and, with extended ability, those that are around us. So with that, family, I would like to go ahead and yield the call to Dr. Henderson, Yehoshua Mashiach. Rise and shine, sir. We're still shining.
Rise and shine. How do you hear me?
Coming clearly.
Outstanding. I'm going to be very, very, very brief. All I want to do is come on to remind you and also to notify the people to be well aware being said to them about the coronavirus is somewhat what we would have to bring false news and also to a point where it's not being brought to the general public and especially to the United States of America of the masses would-be situation that everyone is faced with. See, right now they're only talking about flu symptoms, but they're not telling everyone about something that's known as pneumology. it's also taking control over the mind. I know some of you have been paying attention to your television sets and listening to some of the people that are driving their cars into walking people and driving into parades and driving into buildings. This is because numerology and numerology is going on with what is being put inside of this would-be airborne chemical is beginning to also take its neuro effect on people. And I'm talking about your mind. So therefore, a lot of you have been getting the headaches that we spoke of in the past. And we've been talking about these headaches now for a lot of you, now I would say 5+ years. And I need everyone to understand that this is part of the neuro would-be attack or the war that goes along with the nuclear, biological, and chemical attack that's up on the planet right now. And I just wanted to make sure I came on giving at least 5 minutes of an understanding of what's going on, the reason why the coronavirus is being downplayed in a manner in which it is now. Because the symptoms in which they're telling people about only consist of like the common flu. But they're not telling everyone that, as you have heard me in the past teach about neurological and these things that are known as nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, I have taught you about what to look for in an individual who possibly is going through the symptoms. And one of those are pinpointed pupils, tightness in chest. Some people will have, where if they're light-skinned people, they will have a dark gray shade of gray that becomes a part of their would-be skin color. All of these things are part of the neural system that deals with the mind. It's a mind control substance along with something that controls the would-be entire respiratory system, the neural area, respiratory system. So all those things we have to be very careful about. So I'm not going to go too much more further because I am in transit. I do have a lot going on right now, but at the same time, I must say we have to stay focused on what's going on with the accounts and what's being given by the different nations and by the United States of America, knowing that we are the least to be informed of the truth. And thereby, I yield back to you, my beloved. Please carry the people, and I love everyone, and I will be back with them as soon as possible. Peace and love.
Thank you, and be safe. I know Father Yah's got you. Family, the war behind the curtain, when I say the curtain, I'm talking about the hidden things that are going on that are not talked about in the media, are massive right now. There are those, such as Bill Gates and others, that now are being questioned, seriously questioned, about the viruses and what is going on with the nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. This is not only a war for physical position or control of the planet, but this is a war for your minds. This is a war for your spirits, as well as a war to destroy your bodies. Now, when we keep our minds stayed on Father Yah, He has promised us to give us the mind of Christ, or the mind that He has given to Yehoshua Mashiach. So when we have that wisdom, that type of wisdom, I mean, obviously, there's only one on the planet that hears Father Yah Allah directly, and you just heard his voice. But the wisdom that is necessary to go forward in these pandemics and chemical warfares, etc., will be the things that sustain us. Again, family, I want you to be in prayer. If you totally trust Father and His Son, you're not going to be. And if you find yourself in fear, then you're not where you need to be. If you're panicking, you're not where you need to be. Now, when I say need to be, I'm talking about your mental and spiritual state. Your mental and spiritual state will actually be the thing that protects your physical body as well. Because if you're calm, you're less susceptible to disease. Just straight up, family. If you're panicking and in fear, that opens you up. That literally opens up the pores of your skin. And that makes you much more susceptible. Common sense is going to be what you need, family. Think about the common things that you're going to need and what you need to do. Because these are the things that will help you get through this. So, I'm not going to keep you much longer either, family. But know that Father Yah Allah and His Son have you. Father Yah always knows where you're at and what you're dealing with. He will be there for you. If you're in fear, get your heart and mind straight.
All right, peace and love, peace and love. This is Bezel Bay. You're locked and live to Trustee Training. You just heard from that was Dr. Hindu. We got a whole lot of stuff we're gonna be covering, and I'm just gonna put it all the way out there. You know, you're gonna have to really catch up to where we really need to be in a lot of instances, because what's about to pop off affects everyone. We've been talking about accounting. We've been talking about all these various different things. We're getting everybody all the different platforms of what they need to do. We've been entertaining a lot of different resources to help everybody get their affairs in order. We also have been bringing to you certain things that, if you've been paying attention, you can implement. And when I listen and I take notes and I observe and I watch and I allow the universe to give me what it is giving me in order for me to, bring it forth to all those that have an ear, I'm realizing that this is not about Bezel Bay. It's not about me. It never was. I'm just here as a messenger. I'm just here to bring forth a message. And this message isn't a burdensome message. It's not something that's difficult. It's not something that's hard. It is something that's necessary because of the turbulent times that we live in. And they are turbulent because we are not paying attention to what's going on around us, especially in a way where we truly, truly, truly are seeking the ability to be uplifted. In other words, to uplift fallen humanity isn't just a catchy phrase. To uplift fallen humanity is literally that alone. To be able to uplift fallen humanity in such a way where you can, without a shadow of a doubt, be able to be lifted into that position. But I'm noticing there's a lot of resistance in certain areas. And again, I'm going to go ahead and let the agents know, the reason trustees know, that you're going to be tested. And so you got to prepare for the testing. Don't think these Luciferians are just going to hand back over what's rightfully yours because you had an epiphany and you now understand the truth. The truth never needed you to defend it. The truth is truth. It's about your acceptance of the truth. And truth is not up for debate. It's not up for argument. And so again, it doesn't need you to do anything. The truth doesn't need you to do anything other than you need the truth in order to perpetuate where you're going. So I'm literally looking at so many variables, so many various different things that can actually be utilized. And there's a lot of things that I really want to talk about, but I don't want to overwhelm a lot of individuals. What I mean by overwhelming a lot of individuals, a lot of folks want remedy financially. They want to know that everything's going to be okay. They want to know all these things. And in order for you to really know these things, you're going to have to accept certain truths. Certain truths that I know a lot of individuals from conversations aren't really ready to really deal with. And so they're holding themselves back, in my opinion, because liberty is something that you're willing to fight for. So if you're thinking it's just going to be handed to you with a silver spoon, you're not going to have to do anything, you're not going to have to learn anything, you're not going to have to sacrifice, I need you to reevaluate where you are. Because this thing is way bigger than just discharging some debt and getting your hands on some funky fiat notes. That's the truth. It's way bigger than that. Matter of fact, I war with myself because that is the frequency of lower self. When we gotta stay above that. We're there to bring balance to that. What if I told you that everyone is actually receiving any type of financial gain, good, bad, or indifferent? You are going to have to work twice as hard to keep what you got. So if you're broke now, you got to work twice as hard to keep the same level of being broke, because what you're holding on to is worth less today than it was yesterday, and it's going to be worth less tomorrow. You're going to have to work twice as hard. Matter of fact, statistically, if your income hasn't increased in the last 6 months, your chances of survival in the next 24 months are slim. You're under 20%. That's statistics. Matter of fact, they have a system in place that if you're not on track, they're going to do everything in their power to upset the apple cart to force you into servitude. Because he who is indebted to another is actually that person's slave. I know that doesn't sound right. Oh my God, I'm giving you what you're not ready to hear, but you got to accept it. See, here in the United States, they agreed not to use the word slavery. They used the word servitude. You know, the entire educational system and the public system, if you're not taking advantage of the 3 years degree that they make you go 12 years for, you can get what you get in high school, you're supposed to get in 3 years. And what you go to college for 4 years or 7 years, you can get in two. So until you move to that level of apprenticeship and your mind starts operating in that level of frequency, you're not really ready or prepared for what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say is going to fall on some ears. Some people are going to call me after this, or they're going to send me a text and they're going to say, Bezel, can you please elaborate? I'm going to give it to you like this. February 26th, a lot of individuals who are a part of this movement to uplift fallen humanity, they called upon the ancestors for deliverance, for a sign, for a place of refuge, for peace. And in order for you to have peace, you got to be willing to fight for peace. You got to be willing to stand for liberty in order for freedom to exist. And those prayers did not come back unanswered. A lot of individuals are spending fiat notes in hopes of winning some sort of lottery. I propose this, and those that are with WTDTA radio know what I'm about to say. Those of you that have never heard this before, get ready. Take notes. I've already put that out here before we started Trustee Training. I hope you're ready. I'm not slowing down. I'm not going to keep repeating myself. Just go back, and if you miss it, listen to this again in its entirety to catch on. You can actually there's more people that have more faith in the system that they're willing to fund and fuel their own demise. In other words, they'll play the lottery in hopes of winning millions and millions of dollars, only to have no plan, which means the millions and millions of dollars that you have been awarded, you're going to get right back to the individual who gave it to you. And what if the person who gave it to you knew that you was going to give it back? So they never really gave you anything to start with. They just relied heavily upon the fact that they have educated you to the point of stupidity in the aspect of things that require common sense when it comes to commerce. Because in commerce, you're expected to be an expert. You cannot be in commerce operating, thinking like little boys and little girls. You can't be in commerce thinking that you're paying for something when there is no gold and silver in your commercial transactions. You can't think that property can own property. You cannot be in this space unless you're either worthy to learn the fundamental principles or serve it. And that is a tough pill for everybody to swallow. You're either worthy to learn or worthy to serve. Right now, we're supposed to be talking about things like the golden rule of 67. Y'all not even ready for that conversation yet. We're already in March 1st, and we're supposed to be talking about the golden rule of 67. So I have to go with what I'm ordained with. So I'm going to put it out there. Those of you that understand what the golden rule, because it's a golden rule of 67. Those of you that are Moors, we need to start exercising that, because that's what's going to keep us temperamental. That's what's going to keep us safe. That's what's going to keep us carrying on the good fight, if you will. I was reminded today by a fellow Templar, um, in my travels. You're always asked, are you a traveling man? And when they can see your light, they have to remind you of the golden rule of 67. And I suggest that we all take a page from that playbook, because that's what's going to save a lot of us. I know that's what's going to save me. I'm saying this. Look, I was reminded by a fellow brother when he saw my light that he remembered golden rule 67, and that he humbly, humbly, humbly made amends. And this was a brother from another mother. I am of Moorish descent. He is of Albanian descent. Albanian. I am going to say this unequivocally. Conversations that we need to have in the space dealing with accounting can easily be summed up with a few documents, a couple of tribunal hearings, and a good notary, and an ability to have some backbone and a fortitude. The real work is coming back to the knowledge upon which we fell from. Because I know a lot of people, when I say the golden rule of 67, you had to look it up. And that's my fault, because you shouldn't be looking up the golden rule of 67 right now. You should already know it. That means I'm not enforcing the things I should be enforcing in certain teachings, because I'm too compassionate with everyone that I'm dealing with. So I'm making excuses for not putting certain things in certain people's hands. A lot of people have a lot of faith and energy in this system that they call government. They have a lot of faith and belief in the system that allows them to put food on the table. Matter of fact, in the phrase of the currency "in God we trust," they trust that God unequivocally. The creator of all, they have a little bit more time truly going in that direction. So now I'm speaking to you. Um, our polarity has to increase, and in order for our work to increase, in order for us to do more good works, we gotta elevate our mind state to a certain capacity where we can see the true blessings of actually what's there. I can't pour into a cup something that already is there. Uh, for the next 44 days, 45 days, give or take, there is a celestial body that's part of your elodial estate that you're supposed to be attached to. Those that are asleep are going to miss this transformation of wealth. There is enough portable land on this celestial vehicle where it will liberate every man and woman that is melanated on the planet 10 times over. And because you are asleep and you're worried about the elections and all these other things, you're not paying attention to the true things that are going on. And all one has to do is simply look up and remember. But see, if you went outside today and you call yourself going to a place of fellowship and worship and you didn't hear one bird chirp, that means you're not resonating properly, in my opinion, because those things is what the Most High is using to speak to you, to remind you that you are not alone. And that in those times of your lives where you thought that you just could not go on, and this reminds me of the footprint poem, or the set of footprints that were in the sand. And you notice that whenever, our interpretations, that in our most turbulent times, the Most High said that I will always be with you, I will never forsake you. And you notice and you look back through those footprints in the sand of all those times when you only, in your most time when you needed someone the most, you only seen one set of footprints. But you start to question why. You told me that you would never leave me, you would never forsake me, but in the time where I needed you the most, I went from seeing two sets of footprints to one set of footprints. And that's when the Most High reminds you that during that time, those were the times that I carried you. So you're only going to see one set of footprints. It is bigger than you. And you got to remember that. There's an energy and a frequency and all these things that we are going through, and we're all connected to it. And we have to reconnect to it in order for us to draw a positive proponent from it. Because contrary to what a lot of people believe, this system has already shifted. There are things that I will not waste this precious time in elaborating on. I'm going to simply say stay tuned, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something. Because I'm going to let the teachers teach, but my message is a very clear one. If you are in this position of becoming Cecil compliant, you have some information that you received this week that you should be able to go to utilize starting tomorrow. If you're unclear on what those things are, then look at your notes of what you've taken within the week and do a checkout or a checkout list, a punch out list of all those things that you set out to do and how many of those things you actually accomplished. And if you didn't accomplish the things you set out to do, then let's revisit those things that are still on that list, because those things that you have not accomplished are going to have key information, key rooted information, spiritual information that's going to free your mind in order for the body to follow, because the mind is the governor, it's the anchor, and the body goes where the mind is. And a lot of you, your mind is not quite in the right place because you don't see the remedy. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something.
Is born alive. That's what's at the county level, at the hospital. They eliminated that. So you could never really be a state citizen and such. Because that's when we were a state citizen. Because there was, if you looked on your birth certificate, the day you were born, and then down at the bottom where you got registered, well, there was a few days right there that you had to be something, because you wasn't at the time a U.S. citizen. So what were you? What were you? You were still protected. You were still protected because you born in the state. The state still protects you. Child protection law. The child was protected. The infant is what the birth certificate was created for. The infant. Know the difference between the two, people. You know, it cuts down on a lot of little stress and headache. If you know there's a child, you need to be walking as a child.
A lot of people get confused, Mr. Rice, because they both look alike. I mean, they both the same thing. So can you kind of tell them what's the difference between the birth record and the birth certificate?
First of all, the person
what
who
makes
stamps
it the difference? Okay.
The county stamps the birth record, the local county where you was born in a hospital, and vital statistics is the state registrar. The state register will tell you that it is the birth certificate. So you got a county registrar and you got a state registrar. The other one is that one has a number on it after the area code of your state. Every state has a birth area code. Michigan is 121. I don't know. I think Texas is 127, something like. Anyway, every state has 3 digits and a dash, and then the year you were born. And once that year you're born and those other numbers are filled in, it becomes the birth certificate. But in Michigan, that birth record do not have anything in there other than the area code, because that's the same for every state. So everybody born in Michigan all have the 121 on there. But then the other information is filled out when it goes to vital statistics at the state level, the capital. So that's the difference. One has a county register, the other one has a state register. One has a birth number, the other one doesn't have a birth number. Those are the two specific items that I can go on. And I don't care if it's a long form, short form, a round form, square form, don't matter. It's one has different stamps on it. One has a county register stamp on it, the other one has a state register stamp on it. And one has a birth number and the other one doesn't have one. Now, if you don't have it, like Alabama, I do think I was speaking to someone in Jersey that I believe that after 7 years they destroy the birth record. One of these states, either Jersey or New York, one of these states destroys the birth record after 7 years. That's it. All I say that they're doing is trying to prevent you from being alive.
So the birth certificate, the one from when it goes to the state, that's the one that they put on the market. That's the one that's where they put the credit on there for you. I mean, not for you, but for them, but they use in your name.
Yeah, and they have a number. That number, that a 121 dash, all the numbers after that, that is how it's put on the market. That's why the social security number in the front with the dashes is referencing to that number, because that's the number that got the money. That's the money. That's the money. When they register that birth certificate, that's where the money came in. So that's what they're trying to get to with the Social Security. The backside of the Social Security is only for the federal. That's only for federal entities, banks, and Federal Reserve banks, and guess what? A national. So be a bank, y'all. If you want to actually access the back of the Social Security with the letter and the number and those accounts, and you're dealing with banks and they deal with the Federal Reserve Bank, then you become a bank, okay? You become a bank. You can request it on irs.gov and get a banker's ID number, EIN number. Operate as a bank. Write up letters of credit. Or do a 1099-A. You know, where you put the Federal Reserve Bank as being the lender and the birth certificate name and social being the borrower. And then you do a 1099 OID where the birth certificate is the recipient and the bank will be the borrower. So, receiving it. I'm sorry, be the payer. I'm sorry, OID. The birth certificate is the payer and the recipient, the receiver, will be your bank of credit. That credit is passed to your bank. Now you can write a letter of credit to those other banks.
Mr. Rice, you confused them. Now, the first one, you say do an A. The Federal Reserve Bank is the lender on the A, right? 1099.
Yeah, it's an acquisition. Yeah, you do acquisition. 1099A is an acquisition. It actually serves two purposes: acquisition and abandonment. But you have to do an acquisition to get money for anything. So the Federal Reserve Bank, remember, they the one that fill out the application to the Treasury to get the money in the first place. So Federal Reserve Bank get the A, and the straw man. Nobody can get money out of your account but your straw man. That's why they need your name and Social Security. Now, once you got the money out of the Treasurer, then now they come in as gangsters and take it from your straw man and you giving it to the bank. They call these people nominees. All of this is explained in publication 1212, page 7, OID. Publication 1212, OID. They become the nominee. And then it said they must file another OID, but only after you gave them an A. OIDs don't exist unless an A comes first. And the A is for abandonment. You aren't paying taxes on the money that you took out of my estate. So I'm reporting to the IRS with a 1099A. You abandoned paying taxes. Once they get that, then they need to issue you an OID. It said they must give another OID where they are the payer and you, the owner, is the recipient. But it says owner, 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 owner. Where did you tell them you're the owner when you gave them that money order? When you paid cash and went to the window? When you gave them that credit card? Where did you tell them you're the owner? You abandoned your owner, the office of the creditor. You abandoned it. You became a debtor. So you don't get an OID. But if you do the procedure correctly, give the coupon back to them, that signify that you are the owner with a 1099A, I'm the lender, you're the borrower, I think that tells them who the owner is. Now they wouldn't have a problem giving you back your money. That's on the coupon. It has to go back to the principal. The problem is they don't know who the principal is because you didn't fill out the proper forms. You didn't let them know who the owner is.
And for the listeners that this is kind of, they don't quite understand OIDs, and you can go back to the archives, and we have done some shows on OIDs, so you could kind of get a little clearer understanding of what Mr. Rice is talking about.
Yeah, original issue discount. Original issue discount. Why is it discount? Because I explained to you earlier, you get 10%, they keep 10%, and then 90%, they get the 90% to do what they want. That's a good tip. That's a good discount. They ask for $10, but they can get $100. So 90% of that they get to use on whatever they want to do, and the 10% they got to hold at the Federal Reserve Bank. That's a beautiful discount. I wish I could pay $10 and I get $100 worth of credit. That's why original issue discount is being issued. This discount, they call it advances. And what is it? All advances must go to what? All nationals, member banks. Well, I'm a national. So it seems like I should be getting my money back. But as a national, you're the owner. But you never told them that. You never showed them that you are the owner.
They looking at all of us as U.S. citizens.
Slaves.
And they
debtors.
they control U.S. citizens.
Yes.
That's why they're coming out with the census. They're coming out with, they want you to mark off U.S. citizen on the new census forms that they are coming out with.
They want to get paid. They get so much money for everybody, each and every person they get money for. No calls? Come on, folks. Don't tell me. How can y'all be confused when you don't ask questions? I don't get it. Did you do that in school? How many of you all got a high school diploma? Maybe I'm talking to the wrong people. Because apparently people who really learning, if you're really learning, and if you haven't done this process, then you must be learning. How come you're not calling in and asking questions That's what we're here for. It's free, people. It's free. Okay? So why are you not calling in? It don't cost you to call us. Not, at least I don't hope, unless you're with Metro, they charge extra for this call. However, I use Google Voice. Go online, get Google Voice.
And the information that you're giving out, Mr. Rice, once they go and start looking around, people are charging hundreds of dollars, in some cases thousands of dollars for this information.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. This is something that's happening. I mean, and it's so weird because if you do nothing, it doesn't go away. Some people think they get a bill and they don't do nothing. They just throw it in a drawer. What makes you think stuff disappear like that? I don't understand that logic. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. But that only proves that you are a child. You're a minor. I won't say you're a child. You're a minor. And you're not understanding. I mean, I don't care. You could be over 18. You're still a minor. My grandmother's 103. She's still a minor. She's still a minor. She's 103. Can you imagine being that old and you still consider a kid? Well, I'm hoping to educate.
Because we don't understand this. That's why they look at us, because they got this system up and we don't really understand it.
I have to say,
so
one thing is happening.
Yeah,
and I think one thing is happening out here to all our listeners. The word is intimidation. They will intimidate you. You are afraid of being intimidated. You know, we get so used to their benefits and privileges. That's how they lock us in the first place. They give us benefits and unemployment and Social Security and all this stuff they do for us, and we don't want to screw it up. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to tell them that wasn't it already insured. Excuse me, it's in your documents, folks. I'm just saying, read what you already have. They had a remedy already. They had to put a remedy in your contract. Every contract has a remedy, but you don't know how to read it because some of them may be in legal terminology. Some of them could be straightforward English, but the point is you're not reading it. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't read. You have to read it. You have to see it. And then even reading it, you have to have a dictionary, a Black's Law dictionary, not a Webster, Black's Law dictionary right next to you. And I won't tell you, I'll tell you, they're not cheap. I bought a third edition, and I still had to pay $70 for it, for a third edition. Go back. Don't go beyond 4. Don't go beyond 4, edition 4. Because 5, they start taking stuff out. They took out parentheses in the 5. But we know anything in parentheses or in boxes are not real. They don't exist. You can yank them out, and it would not take away from the sentence structure. So if you get a bill and the price is, and the charge is in the box, it's blank. They send you a blank check. All they ask you to do is say what? Release the funds. Thank you. You got them right here in the bottom under the routing number and account number. Release the funds. And a lot of them are going to still be difficult. Why? Because a child is saying release the funds. We ought to listen to these kids. Well, then there's something you need to tell them to update your record. You send them your authenticated birth certificate that you register to yourself, and you send them notice. This is a notice for you to update my status as no longer being a debtor, creditor, but as at the age of majority under Rule 220. General rules of practice. It's not that it's Minnesota rules. It's general rules of practice. General means all over, period. Anyone can use it. Register of titles. Registrar of titles with an S. That means anyone who gave you a certificate, they stamped it as being registered. Or you get a license, they are the registrar. They are the ones you must notify that you are at the age of majority, of the majority. Now, once you notify them of that, then anything you ask for after that should never be a problem anymore. But you need to let them know, I'm at the age of majority. Rule 220. The register of titles must treat the owner at the age of majority, because it says you got to be a registered owner to put the affidavit on top of whatever certificate that you received. We have to control the certificates. I gave you the order of superiority, UCC 3-903, UCC 9-303. What I said? UCC 9-303. You have to have a superior position than what they gave you. The issuing jurisdiction cease to be effective when a new jurisdiction is taken over. That's what it says. The existing or the issuing jurisdiction, whoever issued the certificate, cease to be effective when there is a new jurisdiction involved. So you have to take these certificates of title. You have to get a superior position on top of them. And then you must give it back to them to let them know I'm at the age of the majority. So anything else that comes along, surrendering your driver's license to the Secretary of State, surrendering your certificate of title of your vehicle back to the Secretary of State, they have to destroy whatever thing they have or whatever license or contract, all that has to be destroyed, because you tell them I am not at the age of the majority. That's the way I see it. Anybody got any other opinions out there? Call it in, because, we listen. I'm not going to argue, interrupt. I want us to all become educated, whether it's what I say or what someone else say or anything. And how do I say you need to become a state national? Well, ask for a passport from the state and attach that. You're not giving them a Social Security, and if they don't give you your passport, you want them to send you $1,000. You go somewhere else. I bet you'll find something for $1,000. You'll find somewhere else that you can get that certificate or get that national. If not, goes to the American national.
Now, who do you contact if you're trying to get a state? Is that where you go to the post office? You talking about that passport?
You could do that. You could do that, yes, and attach that letter to it at the post office. Fill out the app and send it. But I was listening to Richard. Oh, what's his name? Richard something. He was saying that the Secretary of State is the go between the United States citizen, the United States, and any foreign entity. The Secretary of State is they call it a corporate soul, where they're in between, they're the mediator between the foreign entities and the local entities, the United States. So if you give it to that person.
It can they deal with private and public, the Secretary of State?
Yeah, they do all the time.
Okay.
So most of it's private isn't public.
Okay. We have a caller, 513-295. 513.
Peace and love. Peace and love. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Peace and love.
Thank you for taking my call. Hope all is well tonight. Myron, I just had a quick question in regards to you stating to surrender, like the certificate of title, to be, the driver's license, all those things. When you say that, do you mean just like actually surrender it to them, like put it in the envelope, register, mail it to the Secretary of State, or do you mean like make a copy of what you have and let them know, you know what I mean, in terms of like if you have your affidavit on top of your authenticated certificate of live birth, is that what you would do, make a certified copy of that and surrender it like that, or what do you mean exactly?
I would surrender the one they gave you, the one that was given to you, surrender that back to them. Of course, you're going to make copies anyway, but to let them know what you did, because you want the green card back, and you don't care if they filed it in file 13, to trash it. The fact that you got proof that you surrendered it to them, and you got the routing number from the post office and everything, or what they call it, not the routing number, what they call that?
The registered number.
It's the registered number to and then you go the tracking number, the tracking number and all that show that it got to their door. You go into USPS and they tell you that it went to their office. That's all you really need. A copy of that and a green card, you surrendered it. In Michigan, we have a law that shows you that it's a little bit more detailed than UCC 9-303. But if you look at UCC 9-303, I think it's Part 2, or B, I don't know, because Michigan use different letters and numbers. It talks about the issuing jurisdiction becomes non-effective. It becomes effective, non-effective when a new jurisdiction is involved. Michigan says that when the owner of the vehicle surrenders, and they use the word surrender, I mean you got to give it back. You have to give it back to them, and you don't need it anymore because you're giving it to them. So it's I did my driver's license that way. I ain't worried about them. I surrendered it, and I got the green card. I got the USPS. I don't have a where's my contract? Because I got rid of my driver's license. Where's my contract? Because they courts only supposed to deal with contract. The proof of a claim is on them now. The proof of claim is on you. Where's your contract with me?
Okay.
So I would give them. But if you got a lot of different people you notifying and stuff, then you give them certified copy. Usually lower levels, but giving it back to the person who gave it to you, then and you surrendering it. You're not giving them notice in some fashion where you're just going to give them a notice. And I'm a foreign entity and I'm keeping my originals. That's one thing. But when you surrender, you created your own certificate with the affidavit. Why you need theirs anymore? There's a police there, give me a certificate title. Here it is. I created it on my authentication, on my birth certificate. My authentication on the certificate.
Can you say that part over? I apologize.
I said the affidavit is creating a new certificate of title for your entity, for yourself. And you're going to sign it, notarize it, and authenticate it with the Secretary of State. And that's all you need for the court. Some of them you may want to register to yourself, but that's only the authentication means that it's acceptable in any court in your state or throughout any country, any state. So you got your own certificate title that you can show. I create my own. Now who would them say, oh, this is fraud? Who are you? Bugs Bunny, McDonald's, King? Burger King, you're a cartoon character. How can a cartoon character tell you what's not real? But that's what we're doing.
Okay.
They're cartoon characters. They're not real, and they're coming for your houses and your cars and your checks and all these cartoon characters are coming, and you don't have a contract with a cartoon character. How do you have a contract?
But,
especially if. Go ahead.
But, Mr. Rice, these are corporations, and we do have contracts with them, but unknowingly, we're not knowing what we're really signing. But that's the only way they can operate is through contracts.
That's true, but do you know the definition of contract, Beverly, is?
Yeah, I do.
What caller?
It's got to be two agreeing parties on there. It's got to meeting of the mind.
Thank you. Two signatures. Okay. Do they have any? Do they sign anything on the penalty of perjury? Do they have signatures on your mortgages or your application? Are they no? So it's an agreement. An agreement can be terminated at any time because it's your agreement. You can terminate an agreement anytime you want to. And the proof is on them to prove what? Did I have a contract in the first place? What are you using as a contract? My agreement? Well, the law says I can get rid of that. 20 CFR 404.1905. I can terminate agreement anytime I want.
Say that again,
Can you give
Mr. Rice.
Can you get that again?
20. You're right. CFR 20 CFR.
20 CFR 404.1905. Let me make sure I got the right stuff here. Let me just verify this. Because I did that with my driver's license and stuff. I use that law. Hold on a minute here. I believe it is 20 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. I mean, that's their rules. That's their laws. My computer's running slow here. But 20, I believe that's what it is. Let me look up travel. But any agreement, it's your agreement. And it seems to me, if you made an agreement, you can unagree yourself. Well, I got the power to unagree it. Let's see here. Driver light. Oh no, where? This one, 20. I was correct. 20 CFR 404.1905. Termination of agreement.
Okay.
That's sweet. Termination of agreement. Let me open it up and just quickly read it for those folks who send the thing. Oh, this man is crazy. We ain't gonna listen to him. Okay. Each agreement shall contain provisions for its possible termination. Oh, did you hear what I just said? Each agreement shall contain provisions for its possible termination. If an agreement is terminated, entitlements to benefits and coverage acquired by the individual before termination shall be maintained. So that means that if you terminate an agreement with your utility company, they just can't cut you off. It has to be maintained. The agreement shall provide. Listen, the agreement shall provide for notification of termination to the other party and the effective date of termination. That's real short and sweet. You got to notify them. I just told surrender and stuff to them. You got to notify them and put it down. And the date that's listed is terminated as of today. But it said each agreement shall contain provisions for its possible termination. This is the Code of Federal Regulations. That is so important. This is not a USC or something that was notified or what. This is their rules. Every agreement can be terminated or modified just as easy. You can modify it too using certain GSA forms. You can modify them as well. So, but I'm 20 again, people. 404.1905. Termination of agreement. I don't know how you can spell it out to be anything better than that. For those on Scribe, Zoom. Somebody came on. King, please mute yourself. King, please mute yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
Thank
in.
you.
I got a question, Myron.
Okay. But you could turn off the Zoom, and the question's going to come over the phone.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Can you ask it now?
Yeah, I got a question about the birth record.
Yes.
Because and my question is, I know you get the one with the baby's feet on it. I guess that's whatever that one is, and then you get the long form, and then you get the short form. Right now, out of those three, which one of those is the birth record?
I told you the birth record is going to have a county register on it. It will not have a state number on it. So whichever one do not have a state number, and whatever one came from the county or the hospital you were born at that signed it, the witnesses, the doctor signed it, that will be the one or your birth record because it states on there, this child was born alive. If that's not a witness, I don't know what is.
Okay.
The doctor's a witness.
Caller, you don't have to look like mine. Don't have no footprint or nothing. I just went to the county, and it's got the stamp of the county on there. And usually that number, Mr. Rice, is up in the right-hand corner or the left-hand corner that you're talking about. of the birth certificate?
Well, in Michigan, it's in the left-hand corner. The right-hand corner is the file number, which is where they file it at the hospital. You know, they have to file it in a hospital, and that file number is how they filed it at the hospital. But on the left side,
those prices are good for today only. There's a lot of flexibility here. We can work something out if bring the price down.
Well, see, the reason I'm asking is for two reasons, and I don't know if they even. Well, anyway.
The Exemption by Moses G. Washington, revised on October 19, 2004. Disclaimer. The material in this essay is for educational purposes only and not to be construed as legal advice about what you should or should not do. The information herein is to assist you in performing your own due diligence before implementing any strategy. Formal notice is hereby given that you have 10 days after reviewing any material on this website to notify Truth Sets Us Free, TSUF, in writing of any word, phrase, reference, or statement which is inaccurate, incorrect, misleading, or not in full compliance with state and federal law, and to give TSUF 30 days to correct and cure any alleged potential flaw. TSUF's intent is to be in strict compliance with the law. In this essay, we will examine the evidence that the government owes each American a huge debt, and that this debt can be used as an alternative to using Federal Reserve notes, FRN, to discharge our debts. In order to best understand the material in this essay, you should have already read the articles on U.S. bankruptcy, Federal Reserve, and Meet Your Straw Man. Throughout this document, we will be quoting various sources. The quotes will be shown in blue ink and a sans serif font. The regular text of this essay and comments in the midst of quoted text will be shown in black ink and a serif font. I will also occasionally underline certain text to draw your attention to key phrases. Constitutional money. We will begin our study on this subject with a review of what the Constitution has to say about money. Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. From these quotes, we can conclude that the people have delegated power to Congress to coin money and set its value. The states also formed an agreement agreeing that only gold and silver coins would be valid payments of debts. This concept of paying a debt will be very important to our discussion. So let's see how pay is defined. Pay. To discharge a debt by tender of payment due, to deliver to a creditor the value of a debt, either in money or in goods, for his acceptance. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Well, the above definition uses the word discharge. We do not believe that pay and discharge carry the same meaning. You will notice that pay carries with it the concept of deliver to the creditor the value of a debt, either in money or in goods. This means that pay includes the concept of exchange, to barter, to swap, to part with, give or transfer for an equivalent. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. So the idea of an exchange is one in which two parties transfer items one to the other for like value. We conclude from this definition that an exchange pays a debt in full. Both parties receive something of equal value. Now, let's look at the definition for discharge. Discharge, to release, liberate, annul, unburden, disencumber, dismiss. To extinguish an obligation. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. It is clear from this definition that discharge is very different from pay. It is evident that there is no exchange of equal value occurring when a debt is discharged. The system that was set when our republic was founded allowed people to pay their debts. Gold and silver both are substances that have been recognized to have intrinsic value for thousands of years. If someone wanted to buy a cow and a price of $20 was agreed to between the buyer and the seller, an exchange takes place between the parties when the buyer exchanges the $20 gold piece for the cow. Our concept of money has changed from the founding of our country, from being gold and silver coins to paper money not backed by gold, fiat money. These concepts began to change after the Civil War. Legal tender cases. During the Civil War, the U.S. government issued greenbacks, which was money backed by nothing, fiat money. This was a significant change from the systems that was established in the Constitution. These greenbacks were very similar to our current Federal Reserve notes. There were a number of legal cases that ruled on the constitutionality of the greenback currency. In each of the initial cases, the courts ruled that the greenbacks were unconstitutional, but the Knox versus Lee case reversed the prior decisions of the Supreme Court. This case decided that the government could issue legal tender that is not backed by gold and silver, thus paving the way of the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913 and the confiscation of the gold in 1933.
Hi, got a small favor to ask of you. Please add your name to say you support our campaign. A campaign which is the most unprecedented campaign in the modern history of this country.
Would you like to know how you can be a part of a $300 billion industry that pays millions of dollars of commissions every single day? Well, obviously those are very large numbers, but in this video, I want to show you the exact complete
33.
The origin of America's gold reserves dates back to 1933, when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt outlawed the private ownership of gold by U.S. citizens in an effort to jumpstart the economy during the Great Depression.
In 1933, America nationalized its gold. In essence, it stole it from the American people.
Roosevelt realized that the only way in order to bring the country out of that depression was for the federal government to control the money.
Under the watchful eye of federal marshals, citizens were required to turn in their gold coins, bullion, and even gold paper certificates at the then current exchange rate of $20.67 per troy ounce. Failure to comply was punishable by heavy fines and up to 10 years in prison. Almost overnight, U.S. gold reserves swelled to 5,000 tons, melted into 368,000 uniform bars, each weighing 27.5 pounds. 1 year later, Roosevelt raised the new fixed price for U.S. gold to $35 an ounce.
Once he acquired all the gold in the country, he doubled its value. You can do that when you own it all.
The difference is the government had the profit, not the individual people.
The following excerpts are taken from the case. In order to understand this decision, it is important to realize that the Supreme Court was acting as a court of equity, which operates under different rules than a common law court. The presumption in a court of equity is that the government is sovereign, owning everything, and that the defendant and the plaintiff are U.S. citizens. As citizens, they are both viewed as debtors to the sovereign government. The court that covers actions between two debtors in the U.S. is an admiralty court, which operates under equity rules. Given this presumption, it is perfectly valid for the court to make decisions regarding who owes who what debt. The court is acting like a parent who resolves disputes between two children over who has a right to a toy that both children want. The court believes it is right and fitting for them to tell the parties what the sovereign government wants done with the assets that they, the plaintiff and defendant, are using. The argument presented by the Attorney General Ackerman reflects this attitude of sovereignty resting with the government. Ackerman suggests the national government should be able to issue paper currency that is not backed by gold. Congress, to exercise the power conferred by the Constitution, then the means by which it selects are constitutional, whatever may be the opinion of the court of its practical wisdom, because the decision, whether practically conducive to the end proposed, is a political and administrative question, and not a judicial one. If the government needed gold and it was in the possession of A, it could take it from him, as A could take his personal service against his will, or could batter down his house, if it stood in the way of military operations. Much of what is done that seems to violate the Constitution is done under the law of necessity, which derives its authority from military or martial law. This case was after the Civil War had concluded, but the Attorney General is arguing as if the war was still being fought. If A had said, I owe this gold to B, and am on my way to pay him my debt, the officers of the government could accompany him to his creditor, and when the payment was made, seize it from him. What difference does it make whether it was the form in which it was done, or whether it was taken from A, and there was furnished him certifies that the money belonged to B and intended for him, was taken by the government, which would be responsible to B for its payment? Attorney General Ackerman, Knox v. Lee, Volume 79, U.S. Reporter, page 287 and 304. Ackerman is suggesting that since the government has the right to take the gold, it doesn't matter if they take it from person A, the debtor, or if they take it from person B, the creditor. Ackerman's presumption is that the government has the right to the gold. If the government does have the right to the gold, then they can just give A piece of paper, a certificate or legal tender that A can give to B. Ackerman suggests there is no difference. If the government took the gold and other substance-based money, then the government would be responsible for all debts because they took the substance-based money out of circulation. The government is given a certificate in its place. Since the government removed the ability of the people to pay, the government is responsible for the debt. If the government took the gold out of circulation, it would be responsible for all debts because the government is the only one with the ability to pay. No one else has anything of substance with which to pay. You've heard it said that he who had the gold makes the rules, but it can also be said that he who has the gold pays. The following excerpt from the Knox v. Lee case shows how the composition of the court was changed in order to get the desired ruling. A majority of the court, 5-4, in the opinion which has just been read, reverses the judgment rendered by the former majority of 5-3, and pursuance of an opinion formed after repeated arguments, at successive terms, and careful consideration, and declares the legal tender clause to be constitutional. That is to say, that an act of Congress making promises to pay dollars legal tender as coin dollars in payment of pre-existing debts is a means appropriate and plainly adapted to the exercise of powers expressly granted by the Constitution, and not prohibited itself by the Constitution, but consistent with its letter and spirit. And this reversal, unprecedented in the history of the court, has been produced by no change in the opinions of those who concurred in the former judgment. One closed an honorable judicial career by resignation after the case had been decided, after the opinion had been read and agreed to in conference, and after the day when it would have been delivered in court, had not the delivery been postponed for a week to give time for the preparation of the dissenting opinion. The court was then full, but the vacancy caused by the resignation of Mr. Justice Greer having been subsequently filled and an additional justice having been appointed under the act increasing the number of judges to 9, which took effect on the first Monday of December, 1869. The then majority find themselves in a minority of the court as now constituted upon the question. The Chief Justice Chase dissenting. Legal tender cases, Knox v. Lee, Volume 79, U.S. Reporter, page 287, 319, year 1870.
There were 5 votes against the Legal Tender Act and 3 votes in favor of it. However, in January 1870, Justice Greer resigned before the decision was formally announced, making the final vote 4-3. After Hepburn was decided, President Grant appointed Justices Strong and Bradley, both of whom were on record in favor of paper money as legal tender. So now, there were 5 justices who thought that the Legal Tender Act was constitutional. Sure enough, when the court heard another challenge to the Legal Tender Act just a year later, it reversed itself to rule that the Legal Tender Act was constitutional after all.
But it has been claimed to be a proper regulation of commerce for Congress to provide a uniform national currency, and that these legal tender notes were, in effect, a mortgage on the whole property of the nation. This is very similar to what was said during testimony of the emergency banking legislation passed on March 9, 1933. See the quote below. And therefore, the best secure and most uniform currency the nation could have. Although in truth, the security for this or any national debt is exactly the extent to which the people will consent to contribute through taxation to its payment. Knox versus Lee. The Knox versus Lee case set the stage for what happened in 1913. The Federal Reserve Act was passed, see the Federal Reserve article, and in 1933 when the country was taken off the gold standard. Events of 1933. You may recall from the U.S. bankruptcy article that shortly after Franklin Delano Roosevelt was inaugurated, he called a special session of Congress. He asked Congress to pass emergency banking legislation.
I have asked the Congress to pass legislation under which the President would be specifically authorized to stabilize the cost of living. I have asked the Congress to take this action by the 1st of October. We must now act with the dispatch which the stern necessities of war require. I have told the Congress that inaction on their part by that date will leave me with an inescapable responsibility to the people of this country to see to it that the war effort is no longer imperiled by the threat of economic chaos.
On March 9, 1933, Congress passed the emergency measure that Franklin Delano Roosevelt requested, declaring a banking holiday. The fundamental nature of the banking system was changed in this legislation. As a result of the legislation, all banks had to become members of the Federal Reserve System. This act further made the Federal Reserve note the only paper currency valid in the U.S. The Federal Reserve notes were no longer going to be backed by gold, but only by the credit of the people and their property. A quote from the congressional record that occurred during the debate on the bill demonstrates this fact. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. Congressional record, March 9, 1933. Emphasis added. This language sounds very similar to what was said in the Knox versus Lee case shown above. The next major change that occurred was an executive order issued on April 5, 1933. This order required all individuals, partnerships, associations, and corporations to turn in their gold. In the essay, Meet Your Straw Man, we've already seen that partnerships, associations, and corporations are legal fictions created by the civil government. However, the term individual and person are used in the order. What do these terms mean? Individual. As a noun, this term denotes a single person as distinguished from a group or class, and also very commonly a private or natural person as distinguished from a partnership, corporation, or association. But it is said that this restrictive signification is not necessarily inherent in the word, and that it may, in proper cases, include artificial persons. See also person, Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Person. In general usage, a human being. In other words, natural person. Though by status, the term may include a firm, labor organization, partnerships, associations, corporations, legal representatives, trustees, trustees in bankruptcy, or receivers. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Natural person. Any human being who, as such, is a legal entity as distinguished from an artificial person, like a corporation, which derives its status as a legal entity from being so recognized by law. Natural persons, members of the body politic owing allegiance to the state. Human. 1. Belonging to a man or mankind. Sense 3. Profane, not sacred or divine. American Dictionary of English Language, Noah Webster, 1928. Human being. See monster. Ballantine, 1948 edition. Monster. A human being by birth, but in some part resembling a lower animal. Dictionary with Pronunciations by James Ballantine, the 1948 edition. Our conclusion is that person and individual are terms referring to legal fictions or straw man. Both of these words are also said to be natural persons, and as such are members of the body politic on allegiance to the state. These entities are created in and exist in the civil society that we call the public. As such, they are subject to the rules established by their creators, the civil government. Men, on the other hand, are outside of the public. You might think of the public as if it were a box that contains only legal fictions and men live outside of this box. Since the executive order applies to individuals and persons by necessity, it did not apply to men. Below is the complete text of the executive order with some embedded comments. Executive Order of April 5, 1933, under Executive Order of the President issued April 5, 1933. All persons. The order applied to persons which did not include men, so when men turned in their gold, they did so voluntarily. Are required to deliver on or before May 1, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owed by them to a Federal Reserve Bank, branch, or agency, or to any member bank of the Federal Reserve System. Executive Order forbidding the hoarding of gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates. By virtue of the authority vested in me by Section 5B of the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended by Section 2 of the Act of March 9, 1933, entitled An Act to Provide Relief in the Existing Emergency in Banking and for Other Purposes. The state of emergency due to the law of necessity was used as an excuse for issuing the order, in which a mandatory act Congress declared that a serious emergency exists. I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States of America, do declare that said national emergency. The use of the word national seems to signify the civil government acting as sovereign, while under the original intent of the Constitution, the people were viewed as sovereign and the source of all authority. Emergency still continues to exist, and pursuant to said section do hereby prohibit the hoarding of gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates within the continental United States by individuals, partnerships, associations, and corporations. The order only applies to these entities, but men were excluded from the order, and hereby prescribe the following regulations for carrying out the purpose of this order. Section 1. For the purpose of this regulation, the term hoarding means the withdrawal and withholding of gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates from the recognized and customary channels of trade. The term person means any individual, partnership, association, or corporation. Again, the order applies only to artificial entities and not to men. Section 2. All persons are hereby required to deliver on or before May 1, 1933, to a Federal Reserve Bank or branch or agency thereof, or to any member bank of the Federal Reserve System, all gold coins, gold bullion, or gold certificates now owed by them or coming into their ownership on or before April 23, 1933, except the following. Subsection A. Such amount of gold as may be required for legitimate and customary use in industry, professions, or art within a reasonable time, excluding gold prior to refining, and stocks of gold in reasonable amounts for the usual true requirements of owners mining and refining such gold. B. Gold coins and gold certificates in an amount not exceeding in the aggregate $100 belonging to any one person, and gold coin having a recognized special value to collectors or rare and unusual coins. C. Gold coin and bullion earmarked or held in trust for a recognized foreign government. Men are foreign to the government. They are outside the box or outside the public, or foreign central bank or the Bank for International Settlements. D. Gold coin and bullion license for other proper transactions, not involving hoarding, including gold coin and bullion imported for re-export or held pending action or application for export license. Section 3. Until otherwise ordered by any other person become the owner of any gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates after April 23, 1933, shall within the 3 days after receipt thereof deliver the same in the manner prescribed in Section 2. Unless such gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates or are held for any other purposes specified in paragraphs A, B, or C of Section 2, or unless such gold coin or bullion is held for purposes specified in paragraph D of Section 2, and the person holding it is, with respect to such gold coin or bullion, a licensee or applicant for license pending action thereon. Section 4. Upon receipt of gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates delivered to it in accordance with Section 2 or 3, the Federal Reserve Bank or member bank will pay therefor an equivalent amount of any form of coin or currency coined or issued under the laws of the United States. The value of gold had been arbitrarily held to a fixed value by the federal government. It was not permitted to float in value as it is today. If someone turned in $10,000 worth of gold, the banks would give an equivalent amount of currency. On the surface, it would appear that value, $10,000 in gold, was given for value, $10,000 in currency. However, the gold had real intrinsic value, while the currency was worthless paper. This was not an exchange, but rather a transfer of the gold from men to the government. Section 5. Member banks shall deliver all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates owned or received by them, other than exempted under the provisions of Section 2, to the Federal Reserve banks of the respective districts and receive credit or payment therefor. This indicates that the Federal Reserve banks are holding the credits for the gold. Section 6. The Secretary of the Treasury, out of the sum made available to the President by Section 301 of the Act of March 9, 1933, will in all proper cases pay the reasonable cost of transportation of gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates delivered to a member bank or Federal Reserve Bank in accordance with Section 2, 3, or 5 hereof, including the cost of insurance, protection, and such other incidental costs as may be necessary upon production of satisfactory evidence of such cost. Voucher forms for this purpose may be procured from Federal Reserve banks. Section 7. In cases where the delivery of gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates by the owners thereof within the time set for the above will involve extraordinary hardship or difficulty, the Secretary of the Treasury may, in his discretion, extend the time within which such delivery must be made. Applications for such extensions must be made in writing under oath, addressed to the Secretary of the Treasury, and filed with the Federal Reserve Bank. Each application must state the date to which the extension is desired, the amount and location of the gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates in respect of which such application is made, and the fact showing extension to be necessary to avoid extraordinary hardship or difficulty. Section 8. The Secretary of the Treasury is hereby authorized and empowered to issue such further regulations as he may deem necessary to carry out the purpose of this order and to issue licenses thereunder, through such offices or agencies as he may designate, including licenses permitting the Federal Reserve Bank and member banks of the Federal Reserve System, in order for an equivalent amount of other coin, currency, or credit to deliver, earmark, or hold in trust. This is a vitally important concept. The federal government set up a trust where the Secretary of the Treasury is acting as a trustee. The people voluntarily transferred their gold to the government. The gold and perhaps other things are the assets of the trust. The people would also be the beneficiaries of this trust. Gold coin and bullion, too, are for persons showing this need for the same for any of the purposes specified in paragraphs A, C, and D of Section 2 of these regulations. Section 9. Whoever willfully violates any provisions of this executive order or of these regulations or of any rule, regulation, or license issued thereunder may be fined not more than $10,000, or, if a natural person, may be imprisoned for not more than 10 years, or both, and any officer, director, or agency of any corporation who knowingly participates in any such violation may be punished by a like fine, imprisoned, or both. This order and these regulations may be modified or revoked at any time. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, The White House, April 5, 1933. Further information, consult your local bank. Gold certificates may be identified by the words gold certificate appearing thereon. The serial number and the treasury seal on the face of a gold certificate are printed in yellow. Be careful not to confuse gold certificates with other issues which are redeemable in gold but which are not gold certificates. Federal Reserve notes and United States notes are redeemable in gold but are not gold certificates and are not required to be surrendered. Special attention is directed to the exceptions allowed under Section 2 of the Executive Order. Criminal penalties for violations of Executive Order. Our conclusion after analyzing the order is that men voluntarily gave up their gold, a substance with intrinsic value, for worthless paper. The gold was held in trust for the people by the government. The Secretary of the Treasury acts as the trustee of this trust. The people, and by extension their children and heirs, are the beneficiaries of this trust. This means we have a beneficial interest in the assets of the trust. We will see later that other assets were also given to the government. The next major step was making it illegal to require gold as a valid form of payment for debts. This was done by House Joint Resolution 192. Below is the complete text of HJR 192. Joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, June 5, 1933. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, First Session. Joint resolution to assure uniform value to the coins and currencies of the United States. Whereas the holding of or dealing in gold affects the public interest and therefore is subject to the proper regulation and restriction, and whereas the existing emergency, again, an emergency was used as the excuse for the action, has disclosed that provisions of obligations which purport to give the obligee a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency of the United States, or in an amount in money of the United States measured thereby, obstruct the power of the Congress to regulate the value of the money of the United States, and are inconsistent with the declared policy. Congress is setting a public policy which is defined as principles and standards regarded by the legislature or by the courts as being of fundamental concern to the state and the whole society. Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition. Of the Congress to maintain at all times the equal power of every dollar coined or issued by the United States in the markets and in the payments of debts. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled that, subsection A, every provision contained in or made with respect to any obligation which purports to give the obligee a right to require payments in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency. Currency would include all of M1, M2, and M3 money as defined by the Federal Reserve, or in an amount in money of the United States measured thereby, is declared to be against public policy, and no such provision shall be contained in or made with respect to any obligation hereafter incurred. This clause makes it contrary to public policy for any creditor to require payment in any particular form. This means that no creditor can ask for payment by check, cash, or cashier's check. It also means that they are not permitted to dishonor a valid form of payment. Every obligation heretofore or hereafter incurred, whether or not such provision is contained therein or made with respect thereto, shall be discharged. You can no longer pay off a debt. You can only discharge a debt. Upon payment, dollar for dollar, in any coin or currency, which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts. Any valid form of legal tender must be accepted to discharge a debt. The debt must be discharged dollar for dollar, which means that we discharge the exact amount shown on a charging instrument, bill, or invoice. Any such provision contained in any law authorizing obligations to be issued by or under authority of the United States is hereby repealed, but the repeal of any such provision shall not invalidate any other provision or authority contained in such law. Subsection B. As used in this resolution, the term obligation means any obligation, including every obligation of and to the United States, except in currency, payable in money of the United States. And the term coin or currency means coin or currency of the United States, including. The term including means that what follows is a partial list, and it implies that other things may also belong in the list. The term includes, on the other hand, is a limiting term that indicates only the specific items listed may be included. Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve banks and national banking associations. Section 2. The last sentence of paragraph 1 of subsection B of section 43 of the Act entitled, An Act to Relieve the Existing National Economic Emergency by Increasing Agricultural Purchasing Power, to raise revenue for extraordinary expenses incurred by reason of such emergency, to provide emergency relief with respect to agricultural indebtedness, to provide for the orderly liquidation of joint stock land banks, and other purposes, approved May 12, 1933, is amended to read as follows. All coins and currencies of the United States, including. Due to the use of the word including, other things may also be valid currency. Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of the Federal Reserve banks and national banking associations, heretofore or hereafter coined or issued, shall be legal tender. Just because other forms of payment are not listed does not exclude them from being valid forms of legal tender. You will notice that checks and credit cards are accepted, but these instruments are not listed. For all debts, public and private, public charges, taxes, duties, and dues, except that gold coin, when below the standard weight and limit of tolerance provided by law for the single piece, shall be legal tender only at valuation in proportion to their actual weight. Approved June 5, 1933, 4:40 p.m., Volume 31, United States Code Annotated, page 462 and 463. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, Session 1, Chapter 48, June 5, 1933, Public Law Number 10. One sample court case that ruled on the legality of HJR 182 was Guaranty Trust Company of New York versus Henwood, Volume 307, U.S. Reporter, page 247, year 1939. This case held that HJR 182 was lawful. Some interesting excerpts are included below. Analysis of the terms of the resolution discloses, first, the Congress declared certain types of contractual provisions against public policy in terms so broad as to include then existing contracts, as well as those thereafter to be made. In addition, future use of such prescribed provisions was expressly prohibited, whether actually contained in an obligation payable in money of the United States or separately made with respect thereto. This prescription embraced every provision purporting to give an obligee a right to require payment in, number 1, gold, number 2, a particular kind of coin or currency of the United States, or number 3, in an amount of United States money measured by gold or a particular kind of United States coin or currency. Congress, apparently to obviate any possible misunderstanding as to the breadth of its objective, ended with studied precision a catch-all second sentence sweeping in every obligation, existing or future, payable in money of the United States, irrespective of whether or not such provision is contained therein or made with respect thereto. The obligations hit at by Congress were those payable in money of the United States. All such obligations were declared dischargeable upon payment, dollar for dollar, in any coin or currency of the United States, which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts. That which the joint resolution made dischargeable was the debt, the monetary obligation to pay. Congress sought to outlaw all contractual provisions which require debtors who have bound themselves to pay United States dollars to pay a greater number of dollars than promised. The resolution intended that debtors under obligation to pay dollars should not have their debts tied to any fixed value of particular money, but their entire obligation should be measured by and tied to the actual number of dollars promised dollar for dollar. The enacting part of the resolution prescribes every provision which purports to give the obligee a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency or an amount in money of the United States measured thereby, and declares every obligation heretofore or hereafter incurred, whether or not any such provision is contained therein or made with respect thereto, shall be discharged upon payment dollar for dollar, and any coin or currency which at the time of payment is legal tender. Obligation, it states, means an obligation payable in money of the United States. Thus, the resolution proclaims that it is aimed at gold clauses and declares, if language is to be taken in its plain and most obvious sense, that provisions requiring payment in gold dollars or measured by gold are illegal, and that every promise or obligation payable in money of the United States shall be discharged dollar for dollar in legal tender currency. As a result of H.J.R. 182, the people can no longer pay their debts. They have nothing of value to give in exchange for the goods and services they need. According to H.J.R. 182, we can only discharge our debts. This was a huge change in our society, but very few people realized what had occurred. The following diagram shows what happened when H.J.R. 182 was passed. You will notice that some entities are inside a box. These are what we are calling the public. Men contributed their gold and other assets and became beneficiaries of a public trust, but persons were considered impostors. So knowing one's status when attempting to access the benefits of the trust is vital. Everything inside the box either serves as a fiduciary or a manager of the trust. The Secretary of the Treasury also serves as a trustee and the receiver of the U.S. bankruptcy. The person in this position is the only individual who can see both inside the box, the public, and outside the box. Title to property. We have alluded to the fact that other items were donated to the public to serve as collateral for the U.S. bankruptcy. The quote from the congressional record indicates that all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation would be mortgaged. Beginning in 1933 or earlier, a system was set up to accomplish this objective. To understand this concept, we will have to explore the meaning of the word title. To accomplish this, we will examine various kinds of title. Title. Real property title. Title is the means whereby the owner of lands or any other tangible asset, such as a car, has the just possession of his property. The union of all the elements which constitute ownership. Full, independent, and free ownership. The right to or ownership in land. Also, the evidence of such ownership. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Absolute title. As applied to title to land, an exclusive title, or at least a title which excludes all other not compatible with it. An absolute title to land cannot exist at the same time in different persons or in different governments. This suggests that various aspects of title can be held by different parties. See also fee simple, Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Fee simple, absolute. A fee simple absolute estate limited absolutely to a man and his heirs and assigns forever without limitation or condition. An absolute or fee simple estate is one in which the owner is entitled to the entire property, with unconditional power of disposition during his life, and descending to his heirs and legal representatives upon his death and testate. Such estate is unlimited as to duration, disposition, and descendability. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. A term which is very similar to fee simple is allodium. Allodium. Land held absolutely in one's own right, and not of any lord or superior. Land not subject to feudal duties or burdens. An estate held by absolute ownership, without recognizing any superior to whom any duties is due on account thereof. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. From the above definitions, we see that there are multiple elements which constitute ownership. Title can be divided into two distinct parts, equitable title and legal title. Legal title. one cognizable or enforceable in a court of law, or on which is complete and perfect so far as regards the apparent right of ownership and possession, but which carries no beneficial interest in the property, another person being equitably entitled thereto. In either case, the antithesis of equitable title. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Equitable title. A right to the party to whom it belongs to have the legal title transferred to him, or the beneficial interest of one person whom equity regards as the real owner, although the legal title is vested in another. See also equitable ownership. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Equitable ownership. The ownership interest of one who has equitable as contrasted with legal ownership of property, as in the case of a trust beneficiary. Ownership rights which are protected in equity. See also equitable interest. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Equitable interest. The interest of a beneficiary under a trust is considered equitable as contrasted with the interest of the trustee, which is a legal interest, because the trustee has legal as contrasted with equitable title. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. The above definitions make it clear that the right to property is divided between equitable and legal title. The legal title portion is the right of possession, but which carries no beneficial interest in the property. The equitable title portion carries the beneficial interest portion of the title. Based upon these definitions, we would suggest that when we buy property, we are only given the legal title and therefore only have the right of possession. This means when we buy land and a house, we can live on the land and in the house. But we suggest that the county where it exists and is registered acts as the trustee to hold the equitable title or beneficial interest for the beneficiaries, the people. The county is the trustee over the equitable interest, and we pay trustee fees to the county in the form of property taxes. One who holds property as fee simple or nolodium would pay no property taxes. In the early 1900s, virtually all property was held in nolodium and no property taxes were paid. We would suggest that these same principles of title apply to virtually all other things of value. We hold the right of possession, and the government at some level, county, state, federal, acts as trustee to hold the equitable interest. In the article about the straw man, we saw that your birth certificate is registered when you're born. This means the government holds title to your straw man's name. When you get married, you get a marriage license that is registered with the state. Some have suggested that this gives the state trusteeship over the equitable interest in the fruit of the marriage, the children. This is why the state, through Child Protective Services, can take your children whenever they deem it appropriate. When you buy a car, the title is registered to the state. We pay trustee fees to the state every year in the form of license plate fees. So we see that the government, as trustees, holds equitable interest in your forefathers' gold, your home, your children, and your cars. This leads us to ask a critical question. What were we given in exchange for all of these assets? Our parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents were given paper money for their gold, but this was not an exchange. The gold had real value, but the paper money was worthless. The government needed the gold and your other assets as collateral against their bankruptcy. But what have we, the people, been given in exchange for all of these things? We would certainly do something of substance. We would suggest that we, the people, have been placed in the position of being the creditors to the government. We are owed a huge debt because the government has used our property and substance to help with their bankruptcy. We have been duped into believing that we are responsible to repay the national debt, but we have, in fact, been the surety for the debt. The following quote sheds some light on the idea of a debtor. Debtors are also principals and surety. The principal debtor is bound as between him and his surety to pay the whole debt, and if the surety pays it, he will be entitled to recover against the principal. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856. This quote indicates that there is a difference between the principal debtor, the government, and the surety, the people. It plainly says the principal debtor is responsible to pay back the debt. But if we, as the surety, do pay the debt, the surety is entitled to recover the cost from the debtor. We have been paying the debt with our property, our labor, and our taxes. We are owed a great deal. Another way of looking at our monetary system is to say that everything in our society is prepaid. All money is backed by the people and their property. Without us, there would be no money in our current system. Everything in society has been paid for at the manufacturing level with the money that was created from us and our property. Therefore, everything in existence in our society is an extension of what we are owed, and therefore everything is prepaid by us and for us. How much are we owed for all that we have given? One way to answer this is to see how much money was created for each of us. One person tried to find the answer to this question by sending a Freedom of Information Act request. The person asked how much money had been created for his or her Social Security number. A letter was returned explaining that the government could not provide a full list of the Federal Reserve notes that had been created from the Social Security number unless the person was willing to send them $2,800 at 10 cents a page to provide a copying cost. This means there was a total of 2,800 pages. A few pages were attached to the letter that listed Federal Reserve note serial numbers and value of each note. Based upon this information, let's see if we can create a model to estimate the amount of money this 2,800 pages would represent. Let's assume that each page contained 2 columns of note numbers and denominations, and that there were 2 columns per page, a total of 60 notes per page. Let's further assume that there is an even distribution of the following note denominations, evenly distributed across the pages: 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s. This would mean that 280,000 notes of each denomination would be listed. This assumption would yield a total of 52,080,000. This is just an estimate, but it should give you some idea that the government has created an enormous amount of money from each of us. The exemption we are owed. What do we get in exchange for all that has been created from us? We would suggest that what the people are owed is manifest in 2 ways. The people are beneficiaries in the trust, and the people have been given an exemption. In the broadest terms, we call what is owed us an exemption. Exemption: freedom from a general duty or service, immunity from a general burden, tax, or charge, immunity from certain legal obligations. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. We have been given an exemption from having to pay our debts. We now have the ability to discharge our debts. Do you suppose there's a way to use this exemption to discharge our debts by accessing what is owed to us and held in trust? We believe this is quite possible. To understand how we might access this exemption, we need to look at various forms of payment. We already know that all coins and currencies of the United States, including Federal Reserve notes, shall be legal tender. But it appears that there are other forms of payment which are also valid that are not included in those listed above. A quote from the Uniform Commercial Code will illustrate this point. UCC 2-304. Price payable in money, goods, realty, or otherwise. Subsection A. The price can be made payable in money or otherwise. If it is payable in whole or in part in goods, each party is a seller of the goods which he is to transfer. This quote makes it clear that we may discharge our debts in something other than money, goods, or realty. What could this mean? A quote from a Federal Reserve publication will shed some light on this question. Modern monetary systems have a fiat base, literally money by decree, with depository institutions acting as fiduciaries, creating obligations against themselves, with the fiat base acting in part as reserves. The decree appears on the currency notes. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. While no individual could refuse to accept such money for debt repayment, exchange contracts could easily be composed to thwart its use in everyday commerce. However, a forceful explanation as to why money is accepted is that the federal government requires it as payment for tax liabilities. Anticipation of the need to clear this debt creates a demand for the pure fiat dollar. Money, Credit, and Velocity Review, May 1982, Volume 64, Number 5, Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, page 25. The Federal Reserve is saying that the people could easily replace the use of Federal Reserve notes in daily life by using exchange contracts. This is amazing news. It means that we can use exchange contracts to discharge our debts. We will lead the discussion of what an exchange contract is and how it might be used for another essay. For now, let's turn our attention to what we currently use for money or call money. Federal Reserve notes. What is a note? Note. An instrument containing an express and absolute promise of signer. Example, maker. To pay to a specified person or order or bearer a definite sum of money at a specified time. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. So a note is a promise to pay. The definition says that the note must be signed. If you look at a Federal Reserve note, you will notice there are two signatures, two witnesses promising to pay. The Treasurer of the United States and the Secretary of the Treasury. So a Federal Reserve note is a pledge on the part of the government to pay a debt. This means that a Federal Reserve note is a liability and not an asset. It means that every Federal Reserve note currency that is in circulation is actually a liability. Accounting. If our currency is a liability, then there must also be some assets to balance the books. So it is apparent that we need to understand some basic accounting. First, let's see how accounting and account are defined. Accounting, an act or system of making up or settling accounts, a statement of account, or a debit and credit in financial transaction. Rendition of an account either voluntarily or by order of a court. In the latter case, it imports a rendition of a judgment from the balance ascertained to be due. The term may include payment of the amount due. Major accounting methods are the cash basis and the accrual basis. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Account. A detailed statement of the mutual demands and the nature of debit and credit between parties arising out of a contract or some fiduciary relation. A statement in writing of debits and credits or of receipts and payments. A list of items of debits and credits with their respective dates. Any account with a bank, including a checking, time, interest, or saving account. Account means any right to payment for goods sold or leased or for services rendered which is not evidenced by an instrument or chattel paper, whether or not it has been earned by performance. Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. These definitions suggest that an account is something to keep track of debits and credits, and accounting would be the practice of keeping track of debits and credits. Accounts are only needed when payment of goods and services are not made in full at the time of purchase. When you buy something on credit, house, credit card, or car, an account is established to keep track of how much you owe. You open a checking account when you no longer want to pay for everything with cash. The checking account allows the bank to keep track of how much money you have. Black's 7th edition lists a number of different kinds of accounts, but for our purposes, there are 3 that are particularly interesting. Closed account. An account that no further credits or debits may be added to, but that remains open for adjustment and set-off. Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition. Offset account. One of 2 accounts that balance against each other and cancel each other out when the books are closed. Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition. Open account. Sense 1, an unpaid or unsettled account. Sense 2, an account that is left open for ongoing debit and credit entries and that has a fluctuating balance until each party finds it convenient to settle and close. Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition. From these definitions, it becomes clear that so long as there is still activity occurring, an account remains open. But once all public activity, debit and credit, has ceased, the account is closed. When you make the final payment on a loan, the account is closed. When you no longer need a checking account, You withdraw all the funds and close it. But a closed account remains open for two types of transactions: adjustments and set-offs. The idea of an offset account suggests that when two parties owe one another, set-off can be used to cancel out opposing debts. The definition of set-off will give us another clue on how to use our exemption. Set-off. Sense 2. A debtor's right to reduce the amount of a debt by any sum the creditor owes the debtor. The counterbalancing sum owed by the creditor. Set-off signifies the subtraction or taking away of one demand from another opposite or cross demand, so as to distinguish the smaller demand and reduce the greater by the amount of the less. Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition. It appears that if two parties owe one another opposing sums, a portion of the larger debt can be discharged by the amount of the smaller debt. The one who is owed the larger amount is called the creditor, and the one who owes the smaller amount is the debtor. We have already seen that we are the creditor over the government, who is the debtor, and that it owes us vast sums. Since we are the creditor, it would appear that there should be some method of using what the government owes to us to set off what we owe to other creditors. We have already been introduced to the concept of a bill of exchange. Various people and groups have researched how a bill of exchange and other instruments might be used to access our exemption in order to discharge our debts. They have discovered that these instruments can be effective. Our goal is to eventually discover how a man can use bills of exchange or other instruments to discharge all of his debts. The implications of such a discovery would be staggering. It would mean complete financial freedom for those who discover and learn to apply these principles. It is beyond the scope of this essay to cover the exact mechanisms for using these instruments to discharge debts. Our purpose here was to demonstrate that we the people are the creditors and that the government owes us a huge debt, which we call our exemption. Another essay will cover exactly how to gain control of our straw man, and then we can see the mechanics of how to use our exemption.
Greatly the work that they're doing at the Innocence Project. I yield to nobody in my admiration for the work that they do, but it is a national scandal that they should be doing this work at all. I'm trying to do my part to supplement her efforts at the front end by trying to see to it that fewer people get convicted for crimes that they did not commit. And I guarantee you that if enough young people read this book, there is no question that we will start convicting immediately fewer innocent people. We will have fewer false convictions. How many? Nobody can say for sure. But even if there's only a few, then all the work that I did on this book will have been time well spent. And the other thing, my other related motivation, is to bring to an end, once and for all, the absolutely obscene and hypocritical double standard, the discrepancy, the grotesque discrepancy between what police officers tell your children and tell you every day, all night, all over the country, and what they go home and privately tell their own children. I'm not trying to impugn their honesty or their integrity as a general matter, as I emphatically emphasize in the book. It's nothing personal. I'm not trying to suggest that police officers, by and large, are less honorable or honest than your average individual on the street. They're just doing what they've been trained to do ever since they started on the job. At the police academy from day one, they're given sophisticated training in elaborate methods of deception and trickery and dishonesty in ways that are designed to get guilty and innocent people both to talk and to make admissions, damaging admissions that can be used to help convict them, in some cases of crimes that they didn't even commit. And then when they get on the job and they start using these tactics, they get nothing but ratification, support, confirmation, and corroboration from the courts that are routinely giving them a nice, well done, attaboy, good job, you did it again. We'll allow this confession to be used even though you told this guy the most unspeakable lies. Well done, officer, now you get back to work and keep on doing it. And yet when these same officers go at home at night, how do they sleep with themselves? I'll tell you how they sleep. They go at home. They get home, and they open the door, and they say to the wife, hey, where are the kids? Where are the twins? And the kids come running into the room, and they grab the kids in their arms, and they say, come here, Jennifer, Joel. And with tears running down their face, the police officers say to the kids, promise me for the love of God that as long as you live, you will never let any police officer do to you what I do to other people's kids all day long. And it sounds like a joke, but it really is an accurate paraphrase of the reality. I've been all over the country talking to thousands of young people in the past 5 years about this subject. Everywhere I go, without exception, I ask every audience, anybody here have a mom or a dad who's a police officer or a prosecutor? There's always one or two. I ask them every time, what do your parents tell you about the Fifth Amendment? Every time, no exception. 100% of them say, they said the same thing. They told me when I was a young kid, very young, don't ever talk to the police. Don't ever agree to talk to them. If the police say, can I ask you a couple of questions? You say no. That's why the subtitle of this book is what police officers tell their own children about the Fifth Amendment. Next question. The most common question I get in email, I get this one all the time. What about traffic stops? Is it okay if I talk to a police officer during the course of a routine traffic stop? Yes. All right, let's just get that out of the way quickly. At the risk of stating what ought to be obvious, that is completely different in 100 obvious ways, not the least of which is the fact that the police officers have virtually unbridled discretion to let you off with a warning this time and to let you go without giving you a ticket if it seems to them that you're not a public menace, that you aren't drunk, that you are suitably respectful and courteous. And that's not going to happen with a murder investigation. They're not going to let you off because you seem to be really sorry for what you have done. But I will give you this one little bit of free legal advice. When you do get stopped and pulled over by the police, you shouldn't talk any more than necessary. Don't allow them to get you in a conversation about what you did wrong or whether you know what you did wrong. Just tell them, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I didn't mean to violate the law, and if I did, I appreciate you bringing it to my attention, officer. If they suspect that you have been driving while intoxicated, and they ask you if you could recite the alphabet backwards, you don't get into a long conversation or an argument of any sort, just say this. Just say ZYXW, VUTSR, QPO, NMLKG, ISG, FEDCBA. And then you say, now, officer, I need to ask you if you can do that in 2 seconds. Because I need to warn you, if you can, I'm putting you under a citizen's arrest, and I'll need to ask you to keep your hands where I can see them at all times. Now, let me quickly summarize for you the main points that you'll be able to get out of this book if you buy the book and if you read it. I don't have time, I'm sorry to say, to give you all the details and everything that's in the book, but maybe that's good, because then you wouldn't buy it. But here are the most important points behind the book. There are 3. Number 1, the reason I'm writing this book is to make sure that everybody who reads the book will come to understand that the Fifth Amendment is just as precious, just as valuable for innocent people as it is for the guilty. And once upon a time, this was well known, once upon a time at least, among the educated, 50 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down about a dozen different opinions in which they reaffirmed again and again and again that there's nothing terribly incriminating about the fact that someone chooses to exercise the Fifth, that innocent people, perhaps even more than the guilty, have ample reason, numerous reasons to assert the Fifth Amendment, and therefore no particularly probative inferences either way can be drawn from the fact that somebody chose to remain silent. To those who understand how the system really works, the fact that somebody chose not to talk to the police is no more reliable evidence of guilt than the fact that he also asked for breakfast every morning while he was in custody, just like all the guilty people do. Yeah, sure, but so do the innocent. Number 2, you have no idea, unless you've got at least 20 years of experience in the criminal justice system in America today, you have no idea how many different ways there are in which you can get yourself convicted of some crime that you did not commit. Or worse yet, perhaps some crime you never even heard of, or ever in your wildest dream would ever imagine could be a crime, just by talking to the police. And number 3, you will not believe, and I dare say most readers of the book will be literally astounded at how complicated and how hazardous it has become now in recent years, in just the last 3 years, for you to exercise the Fifth Amendment. Let me give you a little bit of additional detail about all of those points. Next question, who needs to read this book? Well, there are two groups of individuals. You're wondering, am I the guy who needs to read this book? Well, yes, you are, absolutely, without a doubt. There are two groups of individuals who absolutely need to read this book, and they need to read it before it's too late. The first group is potential criminal suspects, not necessarily guilty or innocent. If there's any possibility that someday, perhaps soon, perhaps in the distant future, perhaps when you least expect it, the police may find themselves in possession of evidence that persuades them maybe you were involved in or know something about a crime. Maybe it was a crime you never heard of, which is not unlikely, which is not unusual. The federal government today has over 10,000 criminal statutes on the books when you count all the tens of thousands of criminal federal regulations that are incorporated by reference into the terms of the U.S. Penal Code. And who is that, by the way? Who in this room is somebody who might someday be a potential criminal suspect? Of course, the answer is everybody. You can't comfort yourself with the assurance that, well, I know in my heart I'll never do anything wrong. That doesn't matter. Maybe some mistaken or confused but sincere and credible-sounding eyewitness might mistakenly identify you as somebody who was there. Maybe you were there at the scene. Doesn't mean you were involved, but you're one of the leads. You may be the only lead that they've got. If you are a potential criminal suspect, you need to read this book. Or if any of your children might someday become a criminal suspect, they need to read this book before they are taken into custody. Or before, more likely, the police don't take them into custody, but simply say, you mind coming down to the office on a voluntary basis, down to the station? You're not under arrest. It's strictly voluntary. You can leave at any time. They like to say this to your kids, to deceive them, to get the kid's guard down. Sometimes it's grotesquely deceptive because sometimes they won't tell the kid that the truth is we've already got a pretty solid identification of you as the suspect from a witness who may be mistaken, but the police don't know that. And they already know that no matter how this interview ends, your kid will be put in handcuffs and he will be taken away and put in jail. But they don't tell the kid that because they're hoping first we can get him to voluntarily cooperate, waive his rights, and talk to us, and we don't have to give him the Miranda warnings if he's not technically in custody. At that point, your kid won't know anything about what's going down because you won't have time to get a hold of him and you won't have time to put this book in his hands. And if you call the police office and say, you mind if I talk to the kid? They'll lie to you and they'll say, no, we can't arrange that, which is a lie because they could if they wanted, they just won't. And if the kid says, is it okay if I get a lawyer? Can I maybe get a lawyer? Very often they'll lie and say, no, we don't need that. We don't want that. You don't want that, which is a lie because a lawyer could be arranged if they want to do that for you. The other group of individuals who really needs to read this book is everybody in this room or in this audience who might someday find themselves in a jury. Potential jurors need to be able to read this book, and you need to read it before it's too late so that you can explain to the other members of the jury. If somebody back there in the jury room is trying to insinuate, boy, you notice that guy, he didn't testify at the trial. I guess that's pretty clear indication that he probably did it. No, absolutely not. As I mentioned in the book, one important study of over 100 people who were exonerated after they had been falsely convicted of something they did not do revealed that almost half of them, approximately 40% of them, didn't testify at their trial. And these are people that we now know were in fact absolutely innocent. So if you find yourself, you might be in either one of those groups, you need to read this book. And almost every one of us could, of course, be in group number 2. Any one of us could someday become a member of a jury, unless, of course, perhaps you have a felony conviction, then you probably won't be in a jury. But if you have a felony conviction, you're twice as likely to find yourself in group number 1. So either way, you've got to read the book. Next question I often get this one. Well, if I take the 5th, though, won't that look suspicious? Won't the police think that I look guilty if I take the 5th? Good news, the answer is no, emphatically no, absolutely not. You will not look guilty to the police. And why do I say that? Because the police know from years of experience that, truth be told, most suspects probably are guilty, and most guilty criminals are not that smart. Some of them are stupid, and most stupid people waive the right to remain silent. Okay, so if you want to look like a guilty person, you want to open your mouth and start talking. Talk, if need be, for 8, 10, 12 hours. That's what guilty people usually do. You see, it's absolutely false to suppose that there's two groups of people out there. There's the guilty ones who keep quiet, and the smart ones, the innocent ones who talk. That's what most laymen mistakenly suppose, but that's not true, and the police know that it's not true. No, the reality is there's two groups of individuals out there. There are those who are sophisticated enough to understand how the American criminal justice system works. This includes, by the way, every defense attorney, every prosecutor, every police officer, every judge, and all of their children and nieces and nephews. Those people never talk to the police, period. And then there's this other group that waives the right to remain silent and does talk. And that group includes a lot of guilty people and a lot of innocent people. But all they have in common is that they don't know how the system works. But although the police won't think you look guilty, they will pretend that they think that because they know that's how you think. And they will pretend that they believe it themselves to help trick you into talking with them, as Tim said a few minutes ago. A common tactic, a very common tactic that is used by the police is to start insinuating things. Oh, you want to take the 5th? You want a lawyer? Why? What do you got to hide? Why would an innocent person want to exercise the right to remain silent? The next time a cop tells you that, you just hand him a copy of this book and don't say another word. Say, read the book and you'll understand. He won't need to read the book. He already understands. He's lying to you, but that's what they do. What about the jury? What about the jurors? If the jurors learn that you told the police that you would not answer their questions, will they think you look sort of guilty? Will they think that may be evidence of guilt? Well, I need to be honest with you. Yes, they probably will. Tragically, sadly, unfortunately, yes. You don't have to take my word for it. More than 50 years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States of America said that too many people, even those who ought to know better, too often assume that the invocation of the Fifth Amendment privilege is tantamount to a confession of guilt. And it's still true to this day. Indeed, as I'll show you in a few minutes, that's even tragically now become a description of a majority of the justices on our U.S. Supreme Court. Unless, luckily for you, one of the members of the jury has read this book and it can explain to the others, no, it's not what you think. There are lots of innocent people out there who take the Fifth all the time, including 100% of the police and 100% of their kids. Until recently, that was not even an issue. The famous viral video that Mr. Lynch mentioned a moment ago, which has been seen over 10 million times, I've got to find some way to get that offline, because when I made that talk 8 years ago, there was no need for me to get into the details, as this book does, about how you do and how you don't want to assert the Fifth or exercise the Fifth Amendment privilege. It wasn't really a thing. It wasn't an issue. Up until 5 years ago, just about 100% of all the criminal defense attorneys in the country regularly told their clients, listen, here's what you say. It's printed on the back of my business card. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me. It seemed like harmless fun. It didn't really matter how you said it or what you said, because the universal consensus up until a few years ago was the jury would never find out that you said anything at all. In the Miranda decision, almost exactly 50 years ago today, the U.S. Supreme Court took it as evident, self-evident, that of course you can't use it against the defendant that he chose to assert his right to remain silent, or even that he stood mute in the face of police interrogation, because that was not logical or legal or constitutional. But oh my goodness, how far we have come, as I'll explain in just a few minutes. As I will explain to you, and as the book explains in much greater detail, unfortunately, in just the last several years, the exercise of the Fifth Amendment has now become a veritable minefield that must be very, very carefully navigated. The good news is it's not hard to do. The bad news is I don't have time to tell you how to do it. You'll have to get the book. And help me finance the operations of the Duane Family Foundation. Here's some of the key points that you will learn in this book when you get the chance to pick it up. I will share with you in the book the astounding and dishonest tricks and tactics that our police officers use all over the country, all day, every day, and all night too, to deceive you and your family and your young people into thinking it is in your best interests to talk. You'll be amazed at some of the examples, many examples in here, of incredible deceptions and falsehoods that were told by police officers, criminal suspects, to get them to waive their right to remain silent. Telling them things such as, oh, you're not really a suspect. You're one of ours. You're on our side. We're going to use you as a prosecution witness, and Johnny against the other kids. You're on our team. This is off the record. We won't use it against you. We won't tell anybody about it. We're not recording this. We know you're not a murderer. We know you're not guilty of any crime. We know you didn't do it. We know you weren't there. You can easily understand how after 5, 6, 7 hours, if need be, of unrelenting interrogation, assurances like these could easily break down the will of even an innocent, exasperated suspect that are thinking, well, if it's off the record and they say they're not going to prosecute me, what have I got to lose? Apparently, I got to tell them whatever they want me to say, if that's what I got to do to get out of here. And then they find themselves 20 years later fighting frantically with the help of the Innocence Project to prove that they were innocent all along. And as the book explains, psychological research has confirmed that these tactics, tragically and paradoxically, are most effective on the innocent, even more so than on the guilty. Because innocent people who know in their heart that they weren't there and didn't do it are the ones who are most likely to deceive themselves into thinking, well, if this is what I've got to say, they want me to say that I was there and that I was involved, I'll say it, but then I'll get a great lawyer for myself. I'll hire one of those great fast-talking lawyers on YouTube, and he'll be able to get me off. That ain't going to happen. And once you've made a confession that's on videotape, and then it contains details that only the real killer would have known, which the police will be sure to take care of every time, there's very little a fast-talking YouTube lawyer can do to get you off. It'll almost never happen. In the book, you will also learn why you cannot and must not believe one word from the mouth of a police officer who's trying to get you to waive your rights. And I mean literally, not one word. The examples in the book will blow your mind of the things that they're allowed to get away with by the courts. In one case that is described in the book, read the case of a family that was trying to find out what had happened to their daughter who had recently been abducted. Unbeknownst to them, the police mistakenly suspected that the father might have been involved in her abduction, which, by the way, is not unusual, because one police officer recently told a friend of mine that 9 times out of 10, the one who calls in the crime is the one who did it, which is not true, but that's what you're up against in the mind of some police officers. If you call them just as a witness, you have no idea whether you're just a witness. They'll tell you, oh, we know you're just a witness. We know you weren't involved, but you can't believe what these people say. In the case from Illinois that I mentioned a moment ago, the police officers, unbeknownst to the parents, found the girl's body, drowned, dead. But they weren't yet done with their investigation. They thought that the father might be involved. They wanted to question him, but they didn't want to tell her that she was dead and that he was a suspect and that he was in custody, because then they'd have to read him his rights. So they didn't even tell the parents the girl had been found, pretending falsely, that they were still engaged in an effort to find her alive. They took advantage of his good intentions. They took advantage of the fact that he would naturally want to cooperate with them in what he thought was an ongoing investigation to recover this girl. And he went down to the station and they questioned him for more than an hour, trying to extract from him anything they could use to pin the murder on him without even telling him that the girl was dead. My friends, you need to understand, the next time you make the mistake of going downtown for a voluntary interview and you let them shut that door, you have no idea whether your loved ones are dead or alive. You have no idea whether your loved ones are in the next room saying, I've got a lawyer here, and the lawyer wants to meet with them. And I've hired a lawyer, and the lawyer's right here too. The police will say, sorry, he hasn't asked for a lawyer yet, so we're not obligated to put the two of them together. And no, we don't have to tell your kid that there's a lawyer out here that you've hired to represent him. You have no idea what's going on outside that door. But the good news is nobody who reads this book will ever go through that door again because you've gone to the other side of the looking glass if you make that horrible mistake. You will also learn in this book the incredibly dishonest things that our judicial system routinely says to excuse the dishonesty on the part of the police. You'll read about cases in this book where police officers said the most grotesquely sort of deceptive and disingenuous things to criminal suspects, saying, oh, we know you're not a murderer. If you didn't premeditate this, if it was an impulsive, sudden thing, that's no big deal. That was a promise that was given to somebody in Illinois, a young man who was then prosecuted for murder and sentenced to prison for 45 years after he was told by the police, oh, that's not a big deal. And the court said, oh, we don't see how that could be construed as a promise of leniency, which is ridiculous and preposterous and painfully false. And the court knew that it was, but that's what they had to say to affirm the conviction, and that's what they said. You can't trust the courts to protect your rights and to defend your rights. You've got to stand up for yourself. You've got to stand up for your own rights, and you've got to know what they are. Another key point that you'll get out of the book. In the book, you'll read the reading test, or if you've got the audio version, the listening test that everybody fails. In this book, I've got a short paragraph of facts that you'll be asked to read, and then a short list of questions, only 4, that you'll be asked to answer about the very short set of facts that you were just given. I've used this same test on over 1,000 people around the country in the past 5 years, and everybody gets it wrong. Everybody. 99.9%. And you will too, believe it or not. And then you will see how I go on to explain how it is that this fact about human nature, the fact that our memories kind of trick us sometimes into thinking that we've read something or heard something, the truth is we really didn't read or didn't really hear, can and regularly is used by police officers to get people convicted, many innocent people as well, because we're so often wrong about what we think we heard. You see, the problem is during the course of the interrogation, after you've been there with them for hours, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 hours, relentlessly employing them one more time, they'll try to get you to talk again and again, to keep you in there. They'll pretend to be open-minded. They'll pretend to be undecided, even though they're nothing of the sort. Well, I'm not sure. I'm still kind of confused. Let's take it one more time from the top. And after hours of this process, it's not unnatural and it's not unusual for somebody to slip up and to inadvertently reveal that apparently he or she assumes something that, truth be told, the cops didn't even tell you and haven't helped you if that detail actually happens to coincide with the facts of the case, because then you've just incriminated yourself. One study described in the book talks about how an examination of 40 different wrongful confessions given by people who later turned out to be innocent, all of them convicted, almost every single one of them allegedly contains some detail that only the real killer would have known. How in the world does that happen? It does happen, and it will happen to you virtually every chance if you give the police the opportunity. You'll also learn from the book, one of the most important points of all, that your common sense and your intuition are useless to you when you are trying to decide whether you should talk to the police. And while you must not listen to those countless skeptics and cynics out there online who are constantly trying to dismiss my video and dismiss my book and dismiss my work by suggesting, well, he's kind of exaggerating. The situation's actually a little more nuanced than that. We can't say never because there's this interesting counterexample. These people drive me nuts. So many people out there, intellectual lightweights on the internet, plenty of them, who amuse themselves endlessly, boasting to all the world, oh, look at this imaginative counterexample I've come up with. What about this case, Professor? What if you're hanging from a cliff and and you're about to fall to your death and somebody walks by and it's the police officer? Can you talk to him? You know, these people are the biggest part of the problem. What they don't see, what they don't understand, and what they're always trying to constantly suggest is, oh, I can come up with an interesting counterexample of that. You don't think I can do that? I mean, any rule that you can think of. There are lots of wonderful, excellent rules of thumb we teach our children. Don't drive at night over 80 miles an hour with your headlights off. That's a very good rule of thumb with virtually no exceptions. Don't jump into a shark tank when they're eating is a real good bit of advice. Oh, Professor, but what if there's a raging fire right behind you and the shark... What if driving 80 miles a night is the only way to get away from a raging wildfire that is coming upon the vehicle at the rate of 75 miles from the back? You know what? Right, that's great. You're so clever. Yes, you're so clever. But I defy you to find an example out there in the real world of anybody who ever got themselves out of a great deal of trouble because they talked to the police and shared information that really couldn't wait a couple of hours. It couldn't really wait a couple of days. Oh, yeah, we can make up examples like that. What are the odds? Maybe 1 in a million. I guarantee you, next time you find yourself in a situation where your intuition and your common sense tell you, okay, you're good to go. This is risk-free. You go ahead and talk. You go for it, girlfriend. Don't listen to that lying voice, because that lying voice is ignorant, doesn't understand what you're up against. The odds that you'll be able to talk your way out of a criminal conviction that you could not have avoided by waiting are 1 in a billion. The odds are incomparably greater that you will unwittingly talk yourself into a jail cell, perhaps for the rest of your life. Let me prove it to you. Let me give you just a couple of quick examples, all from the book. Let me see how reliable your intuition and your common sense are. Michael Morton, we all know this fella. He served more than 20 years in a Texas prison of a life sentence for a murder that he didn't commit. He was an innocent man, we now know, because of DNA and other evidence. He tried to help the police find out who murdered his wife one day while he was gone to work one morning. Went away to work. While he was gone, somebody broke into the house and killed his wife. During the course of their investigation, as is typical, the police quickly came to suspect him because they had no other suspects, and they want to have the psychological comfort that comes with closing the case. And they interrogated him for hours, asking all kinds of questions that common sense confirms could not possibly have been calculated to try to lead to the real killer. Among other things, they asked him, well, let's retrace the last couple of days. Where did you and your wife have dinner the night before? Well, he told them. He told them where and when his wife went out for dinner the night before somebody else broke into the house and murdered him. Now, if you were sitting there in his situation, and you were in that position, and you were trying to help the police solve this murder of your wife, ask yourself for a minute, do you think there's any way, if I tell them the truth, if I know that I'm innocent and I tell them the truth about where and when my wife had dinner the night before, how in the world could that be used to help frame me and potentially convict me of a murder that I know I didn't commit? So be honest with you. Ask yourself. Raise your hand if you say, I honestly don't see how that could be used to help convict me. Yeah, look at all those hands. Good for you. I appreciate your honesty. And the rest of you are lying. What are you, police officers? No, the truth is that fact that he did give them the truth, and that information was used to help convict him of her murder. And as I say, he spent 20 years in prison. How did he do it? No time to tell you, but read the book and you'll find out. Here's another one. Glenn Ford. He was convicted of murder in Louisiana more than 30 years ago. He spent more than 30 years on death row before he was released just last year, after DNA and other evidence proved that apparently, whoops, sorry, we got the wrong guy once again. How was he convicted? Well, he tried to help the police find out who had murdered a shopkeeper in his town. While he was there, they asked him, do you mind telling us where and when you were at a certain time? This guy, because he knew he was innocent, and by the way, we all now know that he was innocent, he made the mistake of thinking, well, I guess I might as well tell them, because he thought, well, luckily for me, fortunately for me, I've got an airtight alibi. I've got a couple of friends who could verify that I was with them in another part of town that same day, that same time. How many of you would be tempted to say, okay, I might as well go ahead and share that information with the police? This is risk-free. This can only help. This can't possibly hurt. You're wrong. You're all wrong. You see, you can't rely on your intuition. In fact, read the book. You'll see how he gave them accurate and truthful information about where he was at the time of the crime, and they were able to use that information to help convict him of the murder that he did not commit. Here's another one, a real case. A criminal suspect was told by the police that he had been identified by the victim in a lineup. All he said at that point was, then she is mistaken. 4 words, she's mistaken. That's all he said. He denied it. He asserted his innocence. Can those 4 words possibly used to convict him of a crime that he didn't commit? Yeah, it was used, and it can be used. Here's another one. Suppose an innocent man is told by the police that he's a suspect in a crime. But the truth is, he wasn't even in that part of the town at night. He was 50 miles away. He can't prove it. He's got no alibi witnesses who can confirm it. But he tells them truthfully, no, I wasn't in that vicinity. I was 50 miles away. Could that information, assuming it's true, be used to possibly implicate him in the commission of the crime? Truth be told, most of you, if pressed, would have to say, I can't see how it could be, which only proves my point. You're wrong. It can be. And people have been convicted because they gave information like that to the police. One last thing I want to share with you about the book. As I said, the book teaches you the surprising number of ways in which our exercise of the Fifth Amendment has now become a veritable minefield. This was not true until 5 years ago. It has become extremely perilous. The book explains what you need to say and what you must not say when you are trying to assert your rights. You will see how easy it is today under the current law, where a clumsy or a careless or a casual or an imprecise invocation of the Fifth Amendment can in fact be used against you in a court of law as if it were an admission of guilt. You can also learn how a careless invocation of your Fifth Amendment privilege can also lead you to the prosecution for the separate offense of lying to the police, which is a separate crime. And the last thing you want to do when you're trying to avoid being prosecuted for murder is to end up putting yourself in a position where you can get prosecuted for the crime of lying to the police when actually you shouldn't have said a word at all. And the book will also explain why you must not worry about seeming polite and respectful when you are talking to the police about your legal rights. I am not suggesting in any way that you should go out of your way to be rude or impolite. That's ridiculous. That's counterproductive, and I'm not suggesting anything of the sort. But the book explains about the countless cases in which real, live, innocent suspects made the tragic mistake of thinking, well, I guess I better take the edge off what I'm saying. If I sound too unequivocal about what I'm saying, the police might take offense. They might take it as an insult. So I don't want to make it sound like I think I definitely need a lawyer. I'll just be kind of tentative. Maybe I need a lawyer? You think maybe I could have a lawyer? Is that okay if I get a lawyer? You want to know what happens when you talk that way to the police? You end up in a prison cell. This book tells you how it happens, and this book tells you how to avoid it. Finally, I mentioned earlier that 50 years ago, the Supreme Court said, you can't use the Fifth Amendment against somebody as evidence of guilt, and that was taken as unquestioned by the Supreme Court just 50 short years ago, but oh, how far we have come. My dear friend Justice Scalia, who was my hero in so many other ways, was the leader, until his death, on the court of the view that actually only guilty people have any real reason to protect or to care about the Fifth Amendment. He wrote that the problems caused by the risk of self-incrimination are wholly of the guilty suspect's own making, because an innocent person will not find himself in a similar quandary. It's a tragedy that he didn't live to read the book. He would have seen how painfully wrong he was about that. And Justice Alito, another giant of the court, subscribed to the same madness. Just 3 years ago, in the horrible case of Salinas v. Texas, he wrote the opinion for the court, the plurality opinion, in which the court held that the exercise of your Fifth Amendment rights, if you don't do it just the right way, can now be used against you in a court of law as evidence of your guilt. And in a later case, also argued and won by the U.S. Department of Justice that same year in the U.S. Court of Appeals, they persuaded one circuit court of appeals to hold that your invocation of the Fifth Amendment can also be used against you as evidence of your guilt. A lot of liberal critics have justifiably lamented this horrible, execrable holding of the court in that case, and the fact that the opinion was handed down by the 5 most conservative justices on the court, the only 5 Republican appointees on the court. But the truth be told, to give credit and blame where they are respectively due, the dissenting opinion written by the so-called liberals in that case would have been even worse for you and me and for the defense of our liberties. And to give blame where blame is due, the opinion in Salinas v. Texas was an opinion. Although it was written by the most conservative members of the court, the U.S. Department of Justice, the Eric Holder, Barack Obama's Justice Department, filed an amicus brief in the court, urging the court to do just such a thing, to which we as a nation could justly cry out, thanks, Obama. What is wrong with the Supreme Court? The final question that I'll ask and share with you, well, I can give you the answer. Scalia himself answered that question. Shortly before his death, he wrote, truthfully, we federal judges live in a world apart from the vast majority of Americans. After work, we retire to homes in placid suburbia or to high-rise co-ops with guards at the door. They're out of touch, and it's not their fault. They don't have any idea what peril the rest of us face in any ordinary routine encounter with the police. Justice Sotomayor, just this year, speaking at Brooklyn Law School, correctly complained that there are no criminal defense lawyers on the court right now. In the name of diversity, we worry so much about getting people on the court who are different gender or a different race. And yet we've got 9 people on the court. At the time of Scalia's death, we had 9 people on the court, none of whom had ever done any significant criminal defense work at all. None of whom had ever been arrested or charged or prosecuted with a crime. None of whom probably ever had met an innocent person who was ever prosecuted or convicted of a crime. We had 9 people at the time on the court, almost all of whom had spent virtually all of their entire professional adult lives working for the government. And most of them, several of them at least, working as U.S. attorneys. That's the problem. We need real diversity on the court. We need somebody who cares passionately about the defense of American constitutional and civil liberties, which, of course, leads naturally to my last question. I see one's coming in right now from Twitter. Will you please agree to serve on the Supreme Court? Yes, I will. I am here today for the first time in American history. This is the first time a candidate has ever announced his.
Now watch this. Everyone who's been paying attention, everyone who's been listening, everyone who understands what this whole thing is about, they understand that a lot of individuals in this particular proportion that talks about the right to remain silent or the right to plead innocent. This is one of their own attorneys. What am I giving you this information for? I'm giving you this information because you're not in Kansas anymore. And the truth is coming out everywhere, through everyone, in everything we do. And we have to start dealing with the truth. Those people that are not in the realm of truth, those people that you're dealing with that don't deal with the truth, you're going to have to separate yourself from them. You're going to have to build a fortified wall, a trust, if you will, something that's going to isolate and protect you from them. And let me explain. I've been watching notes, taking notes throughout everything that we've been going over in this trustee training session. I'm not just someone here that's blowing, hot air or whatever. I'm a perpetual student. I learn like everyone else. I'm learning that a lot of the energies can easily be combated with truth and reasoning. A lot of the battles you don't even have to fight. See, I tell people don't let this become personal before you decide to do something. People are stressing over finances, and we're teaching accounting. And if you're not applying accounting, and then you're asking me questions on what you should do and how you should do it, and I'm telling you to start doing your accounting, and then go into, like, I'm going to go into this manual one more time for all those who for some reason cannot connect the dots. And you know who I'm talking to. And there's nothing wrong with what I'm about to say. Being ignorant just means you don't know. Get over it. Okay? Get over it. What I'm saying is that you're going to have to understand and know that what we are literally doing is I'm going to share with you the information of your remedy in a way where you can apply it. So therefore, the information that we share goes a whole lot further than what it has been going. All right. Let me give you this scenario. Matter of fact, if I show you the manual, because I go through this accounting manual so many times, and we actually teach from it in our international classes. But see, I understand most of them in the international class, they're on the metric system. They still understand. They have a different. It's no other way to say it. They have a different mentality. What do I mean by that? Practicality is that they're not going to. In other words, they're seeking the information in order for them to come up with their own resolution and remedy. So as long as you're giving them that level of information, they're going to apply it. And then they're going to come back to the class with something of merit. And so I'm going to just give you an example of what I mean. The individuals in the public right now that are willing to add an extra tax loop or scenario to their tax profile in order to get back Federal Reserve notes, when the truth of the matter is getting a tax refund means you have screwed up, means you made a mistake. So how do you use that information to get on the right side of the fence? How can you call yourself a creditor in the public and you're not getting back the credits publicly? I have yet to have anyone ask that question when I don't know no other way to ask the question. Creditors collect taxes. Debtors pay taxes. If you take the position that, wait a minute, I'm a creditor, so it is not difficult for me to wrap my mind around collecting the taxes because there is no money. The medium of exchange is debt, and banks lend credit. What part of that is hard? What part of that is difficult? I have yet to have been asked the question from that perspective, which tells me I am I'm failing. I'm failing in my efforts because creditors collect the taxes that's owed. Debtors pay the taxes. See, you get the fact that debtors pay the taxes. So those that are in the public collecting a tax refund, are they collecting a tax? No. What actually are they getting back if they're not a creditor? Okay, see, debtors have to pay the tax. So debtors actually getting back an excessive tax payment. Oh. An excessive tax payment, that's what the debtor is getting back. And this is why when you fill out those forms are financing statements for dummies. Filling out tax forms without accounting is the equivalent of being in commerce for dummies. Because if you ask 3 different accountants, 3 different tax attorneys, you give them your books, those of you that have books, and you say, I don't know anything about taxes, you're the expert, you figure it out. You're going to get 3 different amounts of what you may owe the IRS or what you may get back from the IRS, which means it is based upon your perception of the IRS tax code. Which means if you don't study to show thyself approved, and I can take that code and apply it any which way I need to, because it's built and based upon principles, concepts, conventions. Once again, I'm going to this tax manual one more time. I'm going to, after this broadcast, I'm going to be getting with every agent and every trustee that is in the shot's distance of my voice. And unequivocally, we going to get it together today. It's March the 1st. Unequivocally. Now, let me get the manual out one more time. One more time. One more time. One more time. Y'all ain't ready for that right there yet. I know y'all looking at that like, Brother Bay, what is that? Like I said, we're not ready for that right there, so we're not gonna go into that right now. Not now. Not in this portion. You're not ready for it. Alright. We're gonna go back, because I talk about the first few pages of this manual, and I know it's not difficult. It's just like anything else, repetition. If you start becoming a not a robot, but just practice this repetitiously, you'll learn something. You'll learn that your remedy is right there, right in your hands. It's right in your hands, right in your fingertips. We're gonna go to the accounting concepts. Now let me break this thing down once again. It's about concepts and conventions. Okay? Concepts and conventions. And we're gonna start right here. Nature and the meaning of accounting principles. There is ample confusion and controversy as to the meaning and the nature of accounting principles. There is a school of thought which believes that the term principle connotes fundamental beliefs or a general truth. As such, it is incorrect to use this term with reference to the accounting because accounting merely as an act is only an adoption for the attainment of some useful and beneficial results. Adaptation inherently implies the changing nature, and hence a sharp contradiction to the meaning of the term principle, which stands for fundamental truths. Fundamental truths. Fundamental truths. There is another school of thought which feels the term principle means only rule of action or conduct, and as such can be very correctly used with reference to the rules used in accounting. The American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the AICPA, has also supported the use of the word principle in the sense in which it means rule of action. It has define the principle as a general rule, a general law or rule adopted or professed as a guide to action, a settled ground or basis of conduct or practice. Pato and Littleton, in order to avoid the confusion as to the meaning of the term principle, has purposely used the new term standards in place of principle. Principles would generally suggest a universality and a degree of permanence. A degree of permanence. A degree of permanence. Yeah, I know what y'all saying. What is the degree of permanence? Let me go back. Cause see I'm finna turn up here and y'all don't want to lose y'all. Permanence. 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 Let me go back here. Yeah, we're gonna talk about permanence. Let me get here. Yeah, see my mouse is real sensitive. Permanence. Permanence, permanence, permanence. Here we go. There we go. Degree of permanence which cannot exist in a human service institution such as accounting. And then we talk about essential features of the accounting principles. Accounting principles are acceptable when they, in general, satisfy the following three basic norms. They satisfy youthfulness, they satisfy objectability, and feasibility. Accounting principles satisfy the first basic feature of usefulness as much as because of these the accounting records become more meaningful and useful to the reader. In other words, an accounting rule which does not increase the utility of the records to its readers is not accepted as an accounting principle. See, accounting principles is that which is objective in nature. It is said to be objective when it is solidly supported by facts. It is objective when it cannot be influenced by personal bias and whims. Accounting principles should be as are practicable. It will be seen that assets in the accounts are recorded at cost less depreciation as against a market price. This accounting principle is practicable and feasible because it does not entail the difficult work of what is it ascertaining. Y'all can see that. Y'all see that. You see it. The difficult work of ascertaining the market price of that asset. It does not make it obligatory for the accountant to record all the fluctuations in the price of that asset. Let me explain that, because a lot of people, I know they scratching their head. They feel like their brain is oozing out of their ears right now, probably, and it shouldn't. This is not difficult. You know why it's not difficult? All we're saying as accountants is you give us supporting documents to support your position. You were in the transaction. You should be able to give us why you did what you did. See, this is why you're supposed to substantiate the transactions first, not do it, and then when the sky starts falling, what do I do? How do I do it? I don't know. Let me call an accountant. Okay, well, the accountant is going to go by, all right, are you a debtor? Are you a creditor? Who are you? Look, first of all, sign this, because whatever you say can and will be used against you. I'm just the messenger. You said you got paid. And again, you're going to understand when you start looking at the word, like, how many of you guys know in commerce you have never paid for anything unless you use gold and silver? Now I'm gonna go to my lines. I'm just gonna see who's paying attention to me. Cause see, I get quiet. I want to make sure that everybody's listening to me. I want to make sure I'm not just going over everybody's head. I'm typing into the messenger. How many people know that if you have not used gold or silver to pay for something, I'm going to put this in capital letters, that you have never paid for anything. I'm putting that in the chat. I'm putting that in there. How many people know that? That's number one. If you know that, then everything that you are asking, you can answer your own question. The problem is you don't trust yourself. Or let me say it another way. You haven't looked it up. You haven't researched it. You've been so busy going on what everybody else said. Well, Bezos said this. Bezos said that. Bezos says a lot of things. I tell you, don't believe nothing I say. Challenge it. Research it. The truth ain't up for debate. If what I'm telling you is a principle and you got a problem with it because it's not you're coming from, well, the rule says, the IRS code says, I don't get those kind of questions. I always get, well, what if they don't want to do it? And I'm like, who the hell is they? Who are you dealing with? You have a panel of trustees that have more authority over your estate than you do? Because that's what you're saying. They don't want to. You know they have a form where you can actually substitute the trustees. They got forms in the public where you can replace trustees. Matter of fact, how many of you guys actually got the 234 and 235 forms for the 8302 returns? And again, don't get quiet now. Don't get quiet. Don't say, "Well, I don't want to. I don't want to hear. I didn't know I was supposed to have those." You know, I'll be like, "Oh, you can't be on this channel. You can't be on this channel in this trustee class for more than 3 months and not have never seen an 8302 form, a 234 form, a 235 form." Oh yeah, we gonna get it in today. But I ain't gonna put it on blast. This is what I'm finna do. Everybody has I'm giving you my spiel for the day. I'm finna now open up the call lines. Matter of fact, we're finna have a private session. I'm finna see exactly where everybody is. In a nice way. Today is the day. It's March 1st. It's 2020. They say, for the revolution will not be televised. We say, what if it is? You just didn't know it. See, if you listen long enough, you just might learn something. Yo, those of you that want to get at me, I'm actually here on a Sunday, a beautiful Sunday where it's supposed to be, plenty of stuff popping off. I'm out here working. Because without you guys will not be no us. So give me a holler. Call me out here at the office. If you, those of you, matter of fact, don't let me do this way. I'm gonna make myself available to the ones that I need to make myself available. I already got a couple of things going on with some trustees right now. We're gonna catch up on some things we need to do. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put the conference call out there because I'm gonna let you call in to the conference call. We're gonna get it in. Ask your questions, take your notes, get your remedy, move forward. Those of you that are unfamiliar with my fee schedule, I'm getting this up. My fee schedule, I don't put it out there anymore. I'm going to say it a different way. Attorneys charge $450 an hour. Some forensic accountants charge as much as $1,200 an hour. So you want to know what my fee schedule is? Somewhere between that. I do a lot of charity because I understand it's going to be very difficult for you to get all this stuff in one setting, so I put a lot of information out there. But a lot of individuals that need the one-on-one, the hand-holding, and things of that sort, are more than willing to do that for you between all the other stuff that's there. But there's going to be an equal requirement. And that requirement is, I hate to be an individual that casts pearls among the swine. And so if there's information that I've asked you to read over and over, like my mentor, because now I get it. I see why he's so frustrated, because when he gives information, I should be the same way. I would like, well, you should just tell me. No, did you read? And I have to like get real quiet, like a little kid, like, no. Well, if you didn't read it, and you want me to tell you what I've already given you, which is to read the information for yourself so we can have a bit of a dialogue, the answer I'm going to give you is going to go over your head because you haven't read what I gave you. Think about the information that I've given you. You got to learn 4,000 words on top of, I'm gonna put it all the way out here. There's a total of about 7,000 words that you need to learn if you're truly going to be in this space and understand this. And 4,000 of those words are going to come from what you're doing in accounting. So if I handed you material, it's to build your vocabulary up so you will learn what those words mean. So you'll know how to use them. Because those words are what's being used against you to deny you your remedy. I go back to that concept. How many people know that if you use gold, if you use gold and silver, if you have not used gold and silver, let me put it out there. If you have not used gold and silver, because I messed up on the question, I made a typo. Yeah, I make mistakes too. I'm human. How many people know that if you have not used gold and silver to pay for something, that you have never paid for anything? That literally means that you literally are in a state of denial, in a delusion, because in your brain you have internalized that you paid for something. And let me say it a whole different way. You're going to really learn that you did pay for it, but not how you thought you did. You're going to learn that you paid for it, but not how you think it is. Because you thought the Federal Reserve notes paid for it. They extrapolated commercial energy out of your estate. That's why you have an additional pledge, levy, and lien on your commercial energy that you call labor. Labor. And labor is not the same as income and wages. Matter of fact, labor, wages, and income are very different. But enough of that. You want to definitely get at me? I'm going to put the conference call number in the chat. Passcode. Put it out there. Put it out there. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to see who's going to reach out and drop me a line. See if we can get some building in today. This is the conference call line. I just posted it in the chat. That's where I'm finna be at. That's where I want you to call in and ask your questions. Oh, we're going to talk about accounting now. I'm going to go ahead and let you know. Any and everything that you're talking about in commerce, it deals with accounting. 99.9% of the time. You're either being asked for information that's eventually going to end up in an accounting ledger, or what you have left abandoned is going to end up on an accounting ledger. So that's one of the purposes. And if your come from is not, your answer is always going to lead to accounting concepts and principles. Oh yeah, one more thing. No, I'm not doing that no more. I'm not going over that manual like that, because it's going to make me mad. It's gonna make me mad because I'm gonna be like, man, I know y'all ain't read this. I know you can't have read this and still ask certain questions that you ask. It makes me think, wow, Anyway, I appreciate everybody, man. I'm just saying. I'm in here. I want to see what's up, see what's happening. Call me on the conference line. We're gonna go over the accounting. We're gonna get your remedy, your package together, whatever it is you need to do. We're gonna learn today. Oh, you want me to say the number? All right. Conference call number is going to be 712-770-4010. Passcode 686709 pound sign. Again, the conference call number is going to be 712-770-4010. Passcode 686709. And we can call in right now. Peace and love, family. Peace and love.